Well, hello and a very warm welcome to the IrishRacing.com Cheltenham Festival 2022 special. Special being the operative word because I'm sure you've seen our panel of guests here. We'll always, as ever, have Vincent Finegan and Stephen Harris with me, but also the very special guest for this show, Danny Mullins, Grade 1 Cheltenham Festival winning jockey, is on the panel. Danny, how are you? You well?
Good, yeah, it's great to be on, and yeah, so hopefully we're going to have plenty of fun.
Absolutely. Always look forward to your insight, and hopefully you'll give away a few clues and secrets from the Irish angle, shall we say? Vincent, you keeping well? You've been reminding me in the build up to this. It's going to be about a 26-2 drubbing in regards to Ireland versus the home team. Are you still confident? Are you getting a few nerves as we get closer to the day?
Yeah, like everyone else, it's getting to that squeaky bum time, isn't it? We'd have to see Energamine had a stone bruise during the week. Hopefully he's back on track for the Champion Chase, and the same with a lot of the other races. We just hope all these horses stay good for the next 10, 12 days.
Well, Stephen, I've been one of the few people who's been kind of throwing it out there that the home team are going to offer some kind of resistance. I think you've got on record a quote saying the Irish form was stone better. 2 months ago, the Irish form is 2 stone better. And I think you even got in the Irish form is 3 stone better on the show last week. So as far as you're concerned, it's going to be a wash with Irish winners at Presby Park.
Well, I do think that 19 or more, which is 10 to 11, is an absolutely massive price. I think that's the nap of the weekend, to be honest. If it's 18, there'll be some very long faces here. We'll be struggling to find the money for the next meal, to be honest. But no, it should be a cracking week. What do you think the weather's going to be like, and what do you think the ground's going to be like? You're local to Cheltenham. It's been pretty wet up there, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been absolutely hammering it down all week. I spoke to people at the course a couple of days ago. It was official. If the racing was due to start now, it'd be officially soft all over. At the moment, it's clear blue skies and sun. I think for the next 3 or 4 days, it's going to be decent. The outlook doesn't look like there's any kind of extremes. I think there's odd bits of showers and sun kind of intermittent, and obviously as we get closer to the racing, the weather forecast becomes a bit more sketchy. But by and large, I think it's going to be a blend of soft and good to soft. It'll be on the slow side to begin with, I think. But looking further afield, how it goes beyond that, I'm not sure we'll know. But I mean, that is something worth touching upon as we kick on to the opening race, of course, on the Tuesday, which will be the Supreme Novice Hurdle, the curtain raiser. And of course, we're going to have fans back in attendance, punters going delirious. The ground probably slightly on the slow side as a guesstimate at the moment. Danny, we'll come to you first. Obviously, Cheltenham last year, it was eerie, it was bizarre. An empty arena, horses crossing the winning line, barely a ripple of applause to be heard. I bet you're really excited as someone in that atmosphere to be getting back stuck into it once again.
Yeah, definitely. It was something different in Cheltenham last year, and hopefully, this year it's going to be back to what the owners really look forward to all season, that real buzz, that the feel in the parade ring beforehand, that cheer of winners coming in afterwards. But for us on the track, there was no inch given last year, and there won't be again this year.
No, absolutely. And as I mentioned, the Supreme Novices gets it all going. This is a race which has really been whetting the appetite of Jump To It viewers on IrishRacing.com and the whole racing world alike. Constitution Hill, Sir Gerhard, Dice at Dynamo, John Bond, Kilcret. I mean, the list goes on. This is a bit of a who's who of classy novice hurdlers, isn't it, Danny? I mean, your type of angle in here, I suppose you're not going to give much away from the Mullins camp, but all you can say is that, I mean, Sir Gerhard clearly has plenty of speed. Dice at Dynamo showed lots of speed. Constitution Hill's bolted up in everything he's done. I mean, would there be a kind of preference for you in terms of which horse you would like to be on if you were going to be on one of the big 3 or 4, shall we say?
I think what John Bond has achieved so far this season has been fantastic. People made remarks about him being a bit keen early on in his first few races. Those were races that were run at a dawdle of a gallop. Him and Haydock the last day, where they went a true gallop all the way. His jumping held up again. It was very good all the way down the straight. And I think that slick jumping is really what's going to stand to him around here. The Supreme, it's a 2-mile race, but it can often end up being a slog to the finish. But if you don't jump well down the back, and you miss hurdles coming down the hill, you're out of the race. And to me, John Bon ticks all the boxes with that slick jumping. Sir Gerhard is, joint favourite at the moment, but he's much shorter for the Ballymore, which suggests that might be where he'll go. I'm sure Willie won't make up his mind until the 11th hour on that. Nicky Henderson has said Constitution Hill and John Bon are going to take each other on, which is great to see. It'll make a fantastic race between them, and hopefully Dicer Dynamo can get in the mix. From the Mullins camp, I'd love to see Dicer Dynamo come out and beat some of the Henderson horses, but I think John Bon is the one that I'd like to be on here.
Fascinating. Just to play devil's advocate, John Bon got pretty worked up and pretty sweaty at Haydock. Clearly, punters allowed back on a race course, 70,000 fans packed in, going absolutely bonkers. Is there just a chance you could flip the lid of the temperament of that individual? Or you just think it's one of those things, and if he's got the class, he'll come through?
I think he'll be okay. Aidan Coleman, I presume Aidan's going to ride him again. He's ridden him a good few times. He'll get him down to the start, chilled out. And, once the horses leave the parade ring, they get down the chute. They have 2 or 3 minutes to chill out at the start. If Nicky Henderson is really worried about that, I'm sure he'll have somebody down there at the start to help him relax again. But I wouldn't worry about it. Horses can sweat up and still win. And the fact is, he's probably going to sweat up again in the Supreme, given that he's done it before. And no, I think he'll be okay. He can jump and travel through the races. If in Haydock he didn't finish the race out well, then I'd question it. But the fact he put down his head and galloped all the way to the line in Haydock, that gives me no worries about him getting upset beforehand.
Yeah, interesting stuff. And I wonder if Nicky Henderson, he's deployed the earplugs before, hasn't he, on a few of his fizzy individuals. I wonder if that may be seen again. Vincent, I'd like to bring you in here from the Irish angle, continuing, if you like. I mean, of those at the top of the market, there's a lot of head scratching going on here because it's just looks so classy. I mean, are you with Team Ireland in this assignment, or do you think this could be one going to 7 Barrows, or do you envisage something left of field, perhaps, we're being a little bit disrespectful to really getting in the shake-up in the opener?
Well, the first thing to take note of here is that this is a desperate race for favourites. Last 30 years, we've had four winning favourites, 2 joint favourites, and all the rest have got stuffed. So there's a case for saying, ignore everything and just go with what your gut feeling is on some of these, realistic, because the form here, they're novices. It's a grade 1. They're very inexperienced, most of them. They've only had 2-3 runs over hurdles. Anything can happen here. There could be a fly in the ointment somewhere we haven't seen, something that's improved over the last 6 weeks out of all proportions and could easily win. For me, the one thing here is I'm pretty convinced, and have been for quite a while, that Sir Gerhard runs here rather than the Ballymore. He's a very free-running type, and he's a champion bumper winner as well. I think Willie, just seeing what he's done with certain horses in the past, he tends to prefer to go for the Supreme with these type of horses. I don't think he'd stay the Ballymore trip. He's too keen. He'd probably make the running. He's made the running on both of his hurdle starts. He made all in the bumper under Rachel last year as well. So he's most likely going to be making the run and tanking along, and he won't stay at Ballymore trip, in my opinion. The one question mark about him, as Danny has said here, is the jumping. He's made mistakes in both races, minor mistakes, admittedly, but he's made mistakes. But his level of form is unbelievable. Like you take John Bon. John Bon, when he won one of his races in the UK, he beat an Irish horse called Colonel Mustard by 2 3/4 lengths. The last day, Sir Gerhard beat that horse by 12 lengths. So there's a fair gap here. And Sir Gerhard, for me, he ticks every box, bar the jumping. That's the only question mark. But then again, he's had 2 goes over. They're only minor errors. I presume he's schooled well since. And I'm pretty certain he'll go here rather than the Ballymore. And I'd like to be on him.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, isn't it? I mean, there was a very high-class field, it seemed, beforehand on paper last time out, and afterwards, they're all coming home in different postcodes. Stephen, I'd like to bring you in. Sir Gerhard clearly looks the part. However, 7 Barrows have a very strong hand into this. Danny's already alluded to the claims of John Bon, but Constitution Hill been a runaway winner on his debut at Sandown in a lightning quick time, and then again, they didn't really see which way he went when he bounded clear in the Tolworth. Admittedly, both runs on pretty soft ground, but it's hard not to be impressed by how the Nicky Henderson representative has gone about his business.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ground's key, to be honest. Of the 2 Henderson runners, Constitution Hill is a 3-mile chaser who wants really deep ground, basically. John Bonner's got loads of speed. He wants good ground, ideally. So where we are, if it's good to soft, I think it'll be a fair race between the two of them. I really like Constitution Hill. The form of that Tolworth, the tailed off 4th and 5th have come out and bolted up since the horse of Gary Moore's, and the tailed off 5th come and won in the week. So it's pretty good form. He's a straightforward ride. He jumps well. The one thing about Sir Gerhard, I think, that race in Ireland last time out, the whole world was on. It was a 1-horse market. The front 2 jumped off miles clear of the rest. I didn't think he jumped particularly well. He had dead aim at every hurdle. Now, he's a young horse. I'm sure he's trained by a genius. I'm sure he'll iron that out. But he won't get a soft lead in this race. I mean, apart from anything else, his stablemate has made the running at a brisk pace, dies at Dynamo twice. So it'd be very interesting. I suspect they might avoid each other, to be honest. I think Danny might be right about Sir Gerhard. He might go for the Ballymore. I wouldn't be at all surprised. But of the two, I'm very ground dependent. But I do think Constitution Hill is the standout favourite on what he's actually achieved over John Bon. It's just if we happen to have a dry week and the ground dried out, I've always thought John Bon was an Aintree horse. I can see him gliding round there in a month's time on better ground. Whereas Constitution Hill, usually these Supremes are slogs. They're not one on the bridle, and I can see Constitution Hill grinding them into the dust. But I said to Vincent just before, as a bookmaker, putting your bookmaker's hat on, you're going to look at the race. You'll be able to lay the front 3 or 4. They'll bet you mega odds on all of them. And you've still got 3 or 4 horses of Willie and Gordon's who are unexposed novices running for you very cheaply. So it would be a temptation if they shortened right up at the front of the market.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff and clearly ground dependent. If the rains really did arrive, I thought Mighty Potter's interesting one in coming into this. But very quickly, to wrap up the spree, horse we must mention, I believe Patrick Mullins is going to ride, is Kilcrut. Of course, he showed some excellent bum performance. Taken a while to come to hand, Danny, over hurdles, but there seems to be this kind of feeling coming out the Willie Mullins camp that he's just starting to click. I mean, what's your view on him?
Yeah, he looks in great shape at home. I suppose it was disappointing. You know, he got beat in Cork. Maybe some of Willie's horses hadn't really hit form by the time of early December, but he went back to Leopardstown at Christmas and he was third. He was an odds-on favourite that day, but I suppose the form is fairly decent to what he was behind. Manila Crooner was second in a Grade 1 and Journey With Me is well fancied for the Ballymore. So it's still not a bad run, but it was great to see him win in Punchestown. Unknown form, I think he'd have to improve, but you know, he was very unlucky in the bumper last year not to chin Sir Gerhard, and you know, he definitely couldn't be out of this. And at an each way price, what Vincent has said about favourites having a bad record in the race, there's definitely a lot of value with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Often you have loads of unexposed horses, but this year, more than ever, as you can probably tell, I'm incredibly excited about this contest. Really, really does look a spellbinding renewal of the
just
Supreme
on
Novices.
The weather as well, Ed. Just looking at the long-term forecast, on Friday the 11th, there's 7 mils forecast. Saturday the 12th, there's 15 mils forecast, and then Sunday has 2 or 3 as well. So the last few days on the long-term forecast look to have plenty of rain in it.
Absolutely. I've tied myself in knots though with these weather forecasts, and the ground's ended up good to firm. So yeah, but no, you are right to say that it's definitely going. There is some rain around, and I can't imagine we're going to get the inverted commas spring ground as we used to get in the olden days. We must move on to the Arkle now. Second race on your cards on the opening day. Edwardstone, generally your 9-4 favourite. Blue Lord, Riviere de Tal, 7-2 shots. Hoot and Color, 13-2, 8-1 Saint Sam, 14s bar. Danny, Edwardstone, a horse of Alan King's here, trained obviously over in these shores, who's done absolutely nothing wrong over fences. I mean, what's the Irish kind of angle on him? Are you impressed, or do you think he's perhaps a little bit of a sitting duck for what looks a very strong Irish challenge, as you would expect?
I think he's very good in what he's done so far. You can't really fault him. Warwick is a real test of any novice, and his win in the Kingmaker was good. You know, those 5 fences down the far side in Warwick, they find out any holes in a novice, 2 miles around there. It's a great trial for the Arkle. He's came through every test. He's won a speed track in Kempton, stiff finish in Sandown. Yeah, I think he definitely deserves to be favourite, and You know, if the English win the first 2 races, but Irish boots will be shaking a little bit then. I think they have a good chance of it.
I was,
Riviere de Tel and Blue Lord, I suppose they're fairly closely matched. On their Leopardstown run, had Riviere de Tel jumped the last, I think she would have beat him that day and still gets her allowance. She gets her mayor's allowance, although she doesn't get the 4-year-old allowance, which Gordon Elliott very cleverly used earlier in the season to rack up a few wins with her. There's plenty of others. Of Willie's, Hot and Calours fell early. You would have loved to see what he could achieve in the Irish Arkle. St. Sam missed a fence down the back there and just flattened out. Ciel De Neige might go for a handicap. And the one I like each way in the Arkle is Cours Sublime, Henry de Bromhead's. His first run over fences was fantastic against Fernie Hollow. Second that day, was third at Christmas. Maybe a little bit disappointing at Christmas, but Henry's horses weren't really on fire at that stage. He went back, found a nice little beginner's chase in Gorn, which he came through the test nicely. He's had a couple of weeks off the track, and I think if you're looking at what this lad achieved on his first run in Punchestown with Fernie Hollow, there's a lot of value with him at 14-1.
Absolutely. Yeah, it looks a tasty price there. 16-1 available in a couple of places. So, yeah, value call there for Danny in the Arkle. Stephen, we're bringing you in. Edwardstone in rock solid. We've been covering this horse quite a lot over the last few months on this show. From your bookmaking hat, perhaps from your form hat as well, do you see a negative in him? If he's going to unravel in the Arkle, what are going to be the reasons he doesn't get the job done, if you know what I'm saying, as a 2-1 shot?
Yeah, I mean, he's been vastly improved over fences. I mean, I have tipped him up. I think he's favourite just about on form. The only thing is, I suppose you play the other side of the coin. He's had 3 runs at Cheltenham. He's never finished better than 5th. They were all in red-hot handicaps, though. He ran well, in truth. He's just a much tougher and more polished professional individual now, isn't he? Just coming back to Danny's horse, Cours Sublime, that he mentioned, I fancy him for the Grand Annual. He's in the Grand Annual, Cours Sublime. I don't know where he's going to run. I would much prefer him to run in the Grand Annual. He's got a pretty lenient-looking mark, and I think he'd nearly win that race, and I think he's a similar price for that at the moment, maybe 10 or 12-1. But he's an interesting runner. I thought your horse, Ed, Riviere de Tel, would definitely reverse the form with Blue Lord. There is another but there as well, in that I think Riviere de Tel wants to make the running, and there's a rag in the race, For Pleasure, who always goes 20 lengths clear at a mad gap. He wouldn't help Riviere de Tel, so you end up coming... Perhaps Blue Lord with a patient ride might confirm the form. It's a very, very trappy race. I thought Edwardstone is guaranteed to give his running and was probably favourite, but I think he's short enough now. I've seen 2-1. I mean, I think this is probably sort of 7-2 the field race, to be honest with you. I think there'll be middle pins on the day that you're going to give a good chance to. I mean, I think St. Sam, he's in this race, isn't he? 3rd time lucky if the ground dried out. Again, though, I think he's more of an Aintree horse, to be honest, but a fascinating race. I did select Edwardstone, but I think Riviere de Tel is a big runner if she can lead on her own.
Yeah, Vincent, it's Edwardstone kind of propping up the Irish challenge in here. Of course, Willie Mullins, massively strong hand. Could have Blue Lord, St. Sam, Hallwen Calor. There's loads going in here. I mean, would you be taking Edwardstone on?
Not necessarily now, having said that. I think it's possibly a substandard Arkle. Just the fact that Fernie Hollow was probably the best we had, and Fernie Hollow doesn't go. Blue Lord is one of the current favourites, and I'd always thought the horse would be a better chaser than a hurdler, but you go back to last year, Blue Lord was going to be a very poor second to Appreciated in the Supreme when it fell at the last. So, it's a long way off the top level, realistically. Here you're talking maybe 10-12 lengths off what you'd want to be a superstar over hurdles type stuff. Okay, they've done nothing wrong, some of these over fences, but Blue Lord was lucky to beat Riviere de Tel the last day. Is now £2 better off because of the weight issue or the age issue for the filly, that she's now 5, so she's £2 worse off with Blue Lord compared to the last day. There's not going to be anything between the pair of them, is there? Like Riviere de Tel, you have to say, without the mistake the last day, would have been upsides. There's a £2 difference. Is that going to make a huge difference? Probably not. I can't split them. St. Sam wasn't that far behind the pair of them either. So there's a lot of the Irish are kind of beating each other almost. And Edwardstone has to be a player. If I have to put my pin to the mast on this one, I'd go with Riviere de Tel, because the horse has been pretty professional when it ran up a sequence early in the season, wide margin wins. I like horses that front run in Cheltenham generally. So if it's up at the pace, it's always a good thing too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've nailed our colours to the mast there. But look out for Danny's selection, Course Sublime. Around a 16-1 shot, of course, could end up in the Grand Annual. I'm sure we'll find out in the upcoming days where that horse goes. Right, now on to the big one. The Champion Hurdle, Honeysuckle, of course, the invincible, it seems, Honeysuckle, Hedge Your Market, best price 4 to 7 at the time of recording. Appreciate it. The confidence seems to grow on last year's Supreme winner coming back around 7 to 2 to Hipu, who's begun from strength to strength 8 to 1. Epiton, former champion 10s, Adagio 16s, 20 to 1 bar. Danny, we'll come to you first. We were joking off air. I said I think you're quite bored about talking about this mare, but we're not bored. We're not bored of watching her as racing fans. She's brilliant. Now, whatever you throw at her, she seems to find the answer. And it's, you know, I'm trying to like pick apart her profile and look for a weakness, but there doesn't appear to be an obvious one. Would you share that view?
Yeah, you know, she's unbelievable. She can do it at 2 miles, 2.5 miles. She's done it on heavy ground. She's done it on good ground. She's Honeysuckle, to me at the moment, is pretty much untouchable. But Appreciated is probably the one that's going to give her most to think about. I think without him in the race, she'd be a foregone conclusion. What can he do? You know, he's in great shape. The fact that he's off the track for a year since last year's Supreme, it wouldn't worry you coming from Willie's. He's well able to prep to go there first time. You know, Quigley has done it plenty of times in the past. I think maybe Penn Hill as well.
Yeah. So
that's not a worry. He's in great shape at home. David Casey rides him out all the time, and he's very happy with his work. Honestly, I don't think he can beat Honeysuckle. She's just unbelievable. If I'm looking for one to take her on, maybe at an each way price, and you never know what can happen on a day, it's Epitante. Her jumping at Kempton was back to the old Epitante we used to know. Like last year, she just wasn't getting away from her hurdles near as fast, where this year I was really impressed with her in Kempton. You know, she's back to getting low and slick, and that's what she was back when she won the champion hurdle. Was it 2 years ago? So I think if I'm going to take on Honeysuckle, I'd be doing it with one with a slightly bigger price, that you're playing the each way market, and who knows what could happen.
I mean, just from a jockey's perspective, Danny, when you keep watching the Honeysuckle Road show, where it seems pretty much Rachel Blackmore goes off in front, dictates, runs them all into the ground. I mean, just for argument's sake, if you were going to try and find out a way to beat Honeysuckle, I mean, what would you be trying to do? Would you perhaps serve it up to early doors, or would you try and pounce late doors? I mean, otherwise, you know, you've got to try something, haven't you? So, I mean, if you were looking tactically to try and beat her, would there be an angle in you think you might slightly get the door to open in doing so?
Yeah, I suppose, you know, there's been races in the past where they've gone very fast and she's came through with the test. You know, she can travel away from just off the pace. When they go slow, Rachel usually lines up wide and will get a bit closer to the pace. Not only has Honeysuckle been very good, but Rachel's riding of Honeysuckle has been very good as well, you know, to keep her out of trouble. And she knows she's on the best horse, so she's just putting her in the right place at the right time. And that's been a big part of the story that maybe people forget about a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So whatever scenario the duo find themselves in, they just find a way to come through it. And yeah, the form book and evidence would suggest that. Stephen, I presume you think Honeysuckle's going to win this, but to try and put your betting hat on, have you found an angle in here how we could perhaps take her on from a betting perspective?
I thought she'd win barring accidents. I mean, if she's not in the race, it's probably the worst champion hurdle for 50 years, isn't it? It's not a very good race. I mean, Appreciate It has been put in sort of 4 to 1, mainly, I suppose, because they're worried about seeing each way money if there is going to be more than 8 runners, which there probably just about will be. I suspect on the day, Honeysuckle will end up a lot shorter than 6 to 4, 7 of all on, personally. I can't find a second in. I mean, Epitante won at Kempton. That's her track. She's got speed. I don't think she wants to slog particularly up the Cheltenham Hill these days. She's had issues with her back and other problems. She's got 9.5 lengths to find with Honeysuckle, who's gone forward since, and Epatante hasn't. So I couldn't see Epatante troubling Honeysuckle. The only thing about Honeysuckle, from a punting point of view, if you're going to bet it on the exchanges in running, you must have mega odds bet on Honeysuckle. You can play this back when she gets beat at short head, having traded at 1.01 for £1 million, because she's definitely got a quote, which seems the most ridiculous thing to say about a mare who's won 14 out of 14 under rules. But she definitely half idled in front in Ireland the other day, changed her legs and hung over onto that rail. She's got the potential to sort of wander around. What was that horse, Might Bite, years ago, Ed? Do you remember?
Come on,
wandering around drunk? Not quite that stage, but she's a wonderful mare. I hope she wins. But I will be having 1.01 and 1.03 bet on, just to try and win a small house, just in case anything happened.
Stephen looking for crazy shenanigans. I think that's about the only way we get Honeysuckle beaten here. Vincent, have you got an angle into this? I mean, or is this just a race for purists, for fans, just to sit back and watch and just really enjoy?
Yeah, you'd certainly like to see her win. There's no doubt about it. It's for the whole sport, it'll be a huge thing if she wins, and with Rachel on board her and everything else. And it's what we all look for. We all want to see a superstar, and this mare is a superstar. Having said that, she has beaten very little. When you go back through a lot of her runs, they're very ordinary horses. She was beaten time and time again. Horses like Ronald Pump, and they're not champion hurdle horses ultimately. The one horse in here that potentially is Appreciated. Like, Appreciated was very good in the Cheltenham Bumper a couple of years ago, came back then last year and won 27 lengths in the Supreme Novice Hurdle. That was on the same day that Honeysuckle won 6.5 lengths in the Champion. There was only 1.5 seconds slower Appreciated was as a novice running over the same course and distance. Yet I know the horse hasn't had a run since, which is a worry, but as Danny pointed out, not necessarily a worry coming out of Willie's. He's done this time and time again, and he'll do it again. I think this horse, if Appreciated comes here in tip-top form with his A game, he puts it up to her, despite the £7 allowance. The other massive improver we haven't mentioned here is Tihupu, who was very impressive in Gore in the last day. Not quite sure Tihupu is up to this level realistically. And then the other one thing here is that the Bromhead form hasn't been electric over the last few months. That's a slight worry. It's a niggler in the back of the mind. If you were going to be betting odds on here, Honeysuckle, you'd be a bit wary about that. The horses have not really been firing on all cylinders. They've had a few winners here and there, and Honeysuckle, of course, won at the Dublin Racing Festival. But outside of that, there is a slight worry there. And I'd be inclined to have a small bet on Appreciated, because if the horse wins, you'll be happy you won a few quid. And if it doesn't win, you'll be happy that Honeysuckle stretches it to 15 unbeaten and we have an absolute superstar.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of us looking forward to that. For what it's worth, I've tried to go in, when the door shuts climbing through the window. My bet in this is Adagio each way without Honeysuckle at 7-1. I think that Adagio's form figures at Cheltenham are 3 seconds in the first. I think he'll tank into the race, and he probably won't be good enough in the closing stages, but coming into the home straight, he'd be going as well as anything, and probably he's got to come in the top 4 essentially to pick up there. I think it's that kind of champion hurdle. Take Honeysuckle out of it, and I think you could throw a blanket over a lot of these. Moving on swiftly to the mares hurdle, of course, on day 1. Tell me something, girl. For the aforementioned Henry de Bromhead leads the market. Concertista's in there. Obviously, she's very likely to run in the mares chase. Kahala, will she travel? Needs bottomless ground, according to connections. Stormy Island, 6-1. Burning Victory, 8, 9-1. Bar. Danny, tell me something, girl. The right favourite for you? I mean, she's got obviously the previous Cheltenham Festival winning form in the book.
Yeah, she's got that previous Cheltenham form in the book, but what she's achieved so far this season, I think she shouldn't be near favourite.
Interesting.
Her third was a solid run behind Royal Kahala and Heaven Help Us in Leopardstown. Maybe that was when Henry's horses were a little bit under the weather. I think she'd need to improve plenty from that. She was well beaten her first run of the year in Punchestown, and she got beat after the festival in Punchestown last year. She was taking on the Geldens in that Grade 1 at the Punchestown Festival last year, but I'd be looking elsewhere here. Concertista is probably unlikely to run in the race. She'll go, I'd imagine, for the Mayor's Chase.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at Stormy Ireland. who won the Relkiel hurdle. She maybe a few argued she was lucky when brewing up a storm fell that day, but I felt she was going to get on top. Her best work can be going to the line. She's a tough little mare. She's proven she can travel over to Cheltenham. She won a Grade 1 at the Punchestown Festival against the mares last year, over 2.5, and she's won over the trip in Cheltenham as well. Royal Kahala just beat Heaven Help Us, who also runs in that race with Tell Me Something Girl in Leopardstown at Christmas. Peter Fahey has said he wants plenty of rain, which is a possibility still. I suppose closer to the day you'll be watching that a bit closer as to whether or not she will run. But Royal Kahala, she deserves, to be near the top of the market. I think she can confirm form with Tell Me Something Girl. And you're looking at the others. Queen's Brook, she was second the last day in Punchestown behind Burning Victory, who also is likely to run in the race. I don't see that form being turned around. Queen's Brook had, won a conditions hurdle in Fairy House, and previous to that, she was second in a mare's hurdle in Wexford. I think she needs to improve. She's a bit slow. And the one that's of the shorter price that I'd give a good chance to as well is Heaven Help Us. Her record around Cheltenham is very good. She's won a maiden hurdle there. She won the Coral Cup. She had a pipe opener the last day behind Honeysuckle over a trip that was just way too short for her, but was second, just beating the neck behind Royal Kahala and Leopardstown at Christmas, and also had a decent enough run in the international hurdle in Cheltenham when only beaten 10 lengths over 2 miles as well. So there's a lot to like about Heaven Help Us with her course record, but it's an open race. I think there's not much value in the favourite here. Tell Me Something Girl, I'd be chancing one of the other ones.
Do you know if you'll be riding Heaven Help Us in this race, Danny?
I'm not sure yet. I suppose that'll be closer to the time, depending on how many runners Willie will have in the race and what way the cookie crumbles in that respect. So that'll be decided, I'd say, in the coming days.
Yeah, absolutely. One to keep an eye on there. Stephen, you got a strong view in this assignment?
Not a strong view. I thought Royal Kahala was the one who wants the rain to arrive, as Danny said, tough and reliable. Some people have said, well, one run at Cheltenham tailed off well back 9-2. Right gamble on the day in the Grade 2 last year, but went lame that day apparently.
Yeah.
So that was the excuse. There's come back better than ever this season. Tough, durable, still improving. Perhaps a shade overpriced because nobody knows the trainer, and it's not trained by Willie or Gordon, so that might help. But not a betting race for me. A race to watch. It could be a good quality renewal this year, to be fair. It looks much more competitive than some of the years gone by.
And Vincent, yourself, is this one you're sitting out, or are you pushing the buttons here?
No, I'd be agreeing with Danny here on one of these. Heaven Help Us. I think Heaven Help Us can't be too far away. 9-length winner of a Coral Cup last year. That's a good performance. And as I said, loads of course form. The trainer, whatever about the Royal Kahala trainer not being known to too many, very few in the racing world know Paul Hennessy, who trains Heaven Help Us, but he's a very high-class greyhound trainer, so obviously he's been able to move something from one department to the other here to keep this horse improving. It's one of the only horses he has, as far as I know. He has very few runners anyway. But Heaven Help Us is very good. She wasn't beaten far. I'd say it was only a neck in it in Leopardstown the last day. And could have won. She was just caught close home. I'd expect her to be primed for this and put up a good show at an each way price. Definitely worth a chance. Okay,
strong nod for that mare then. I'm getting true Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga style. I really will break into chorus if Tell Me Something Girl can get the job done for Henry de Bromhead. I'm trusting Henry to have a spot on for the day. Danny, we'll move on to look at some of the other races on the rest of the card on Tuesday. I'm up against it for time here, but Gaelic Warrior, obviously in the Boodles, is a horse, a talk horse, quite literally, in the sense that we haven't seen him run for Willie Mullins yet. Obviously a French import, been allotted a BHA mark of 129. Now, there's a couple of interesting viewpoints I want to throw to you, Danny. I mean, some people, when you live in the very small world, which is Twitter, saying, how can you possibly go and back a horse at 11-4 who's not even run yet, blah, 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 blah. And yet someone else has said, well, how many horses have by Rich and Willie Mullins have not been rated significantly higher than a mark of 129. So I can kind of see which way all the viewpoints here. I mean, this is a horse you've got any experience of at home, or you've seen working, or any kind of insight on Gaelic Warrior, because clearly one of the best backed horses in the handicaps in the build up to the Cheltenham Festival.
Yeah, he looks the part at home. He works very well. I think on his French form, his rating would have translated to 139. So interesting that the British handicapper has only given him 129. I suppose that's the fact that people are getting most excited about. The fact that he's first run for Willie, that's not a concern. He's coming out of France. He's had 3 runs over hurdles. The amount of schooling they do in France, that's unbelievable. That won't be any issue to him. I suppose he's a talking horse, and he has to go and prove it on the day. From what you'd see of him on the gallop at home, he deserves to be favourite and has every chance of delivering on the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those great unknowns, but as you say, off 129 could potentially be chucked in. Stephen, will come to you. Is there anything else in the rest of the card that's taken your eyes? And I'm going to pin you down here whilst we're at it. Give me your best bet on the Tuesday at Cheltenham. What's really kind of floating your boat here?
Well, I think Constitution Hill's going to be my nap, with the proviso that I want the ground to be at least soft, and so the more rain, the better for that one. The one I thought was interesting, and it's stealing someone's thunder. Gordon Elliott, in his recent interview, said about Death Duty in the Ultima, who slipped a stone down the weights and bounced back to form aged 11 last time out in Ireland. Now, he does stay extreme distances, and he's in the Grand National in a month's time after that. So I could see him picking up the pieces late. He's 16-1 for the Ultima. He could run a really big race. I know you've got that penned in for the UK trainers, though, Ed, just to try and get up to sort of 2 on the week, haven't you? But perhaps Gordon might steal it back off you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my best bet on the Tuesday comes in the Ultima. Corrick Rambler for Lucinda Russell. I think he's got a major chance. Obviously, it wasn't the best of preparations by unseating in the Reynoldsstone last time out, but novices have a phenomenal record in the Ultima. I think they've won it 4 times in the last 5 years, or last 10 years. Kustar Sivila, Wichita Lineman, on top Paul 2. There's been a couple others as well. Yeah, a race where novices tend to do really well, I suppose, because the handicapper just hasn't got to grips with them yet. Vincent, handicap's your kind of thing, or is that where you go and make yourself a cup of tea?
No, I like handicaps. They're my thing. Totally. Yeah, you can always find a little sleeper somewhere down in amongst them. Having said that, my bet of the first day, it's been my bet for quite a while, is Run Wild Fred in the National Hunt Chase at the end of the card. Really fancy this horse. I think he's made for the profile is perfect. His second season novice. He was second in a Tayestas Chase, second in an Irish Grand National, won a Troy Town Chase the last time. Can't see him being far away. The one question is who's going to ride him. He's a Gigginstown owned horse. Jamie Cobb doesn't ride for Gigginstown, so I'm not quite sure who'll ride him when the day comes. I've looked at seeing who Gigginstown have used over the last number of months, the likes of young Pat Taff and Harry Swan and a few others in the UK as well, but I'm not quite sure who'll get the ride. That'll be an interesting factor. Obviously, it could be squeaky bum time for me when we see who eventually gets to sit up in it. But the other one here to mention is in the Ultimate. There's a horse in there called Ben Dundee. That has a chance. A lot of the Irish horses have been, the English handicapper has thrown them way up. Some of them including a horse called Ard Hill, we might talk about later on in Gordon Elliott's. It's got a mark now that's 15 pounds higher than its Irish mark, running at Cheltenham. Whereas Ben Dundee is only £1 higher. The horse was third in the Close Brothers to a Plutard in 2019, fifth in the Brown Advisory last year, beating just 5 lengths off the same mark it runs off. It was second to Schoolboy Hours the last day, fourth in the Kerry National earlier in the season. Like solid form. I can't see that being too far away. A horse that runs well in Cheltenham anyway at a nice price.
Well, thanks very much, gentlemen, for your input. That brings the Tuesday preview to a close, and we'll now get stuck into Wednesday's action. Well, of course, looking ahead to the Wednesday of the Cheltenham Festival, we'll have a plethora of Grade 1s which really set the pulse racing. We'll kick off with the Ballymore Novices Hurdle, the opening race on your cards. Clearly a lot of unknowns still here in this assignment, isn't there, with your 2 market leaders, or 3 market leaders in theory. So Gerhard, Dice at Dynamo, Constitution Hill. There's a fair chance maybe one and a Max could actually line up in this assignment. So it's a bit of a head scratcher for punters. We'll come to you first, Stephen, on this one. I mean, how do you kind of play this race? Is this one you're going to wait to late doors, or do you take a punt on something now at a bigger price with the view that you could see the market falling apart?
Yeah, there could be very few of those are going to run, aren't there? I'd be amazed if two of them did. I thought Ginto has long looked the part for this race, to be honest. Again, a tough improver, a point winner, a bumper winner, 3 from 3 over hurdles. Really impressive from the front in a Grade 1 at Naas last time. Revels in soft ground, still improving. I thought was rock solid around about 5-1, and I think definitely going to run, Ed. Is that the case? It's not going to go. It was the Albert Bartlett was talked about, wasn't it? And they've got the other one in that Hollow Games. They're closely matched, those two. But I did think Ginto is the one to side with at the moment. Again, it's a difficult race to pin your colours firmly to the mast until you can see how many runners and what's going to run where.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of muddied waters here. Vincent, yourself, as ever, Irish are a pretty formidable challenge in here. Is there a standout performer in your eyes?
No, I think this is going to end up being wide open, is the bottom line, because I don't think Ginto runs here. We'll wait and see. I'd always thought he'd go for the 3. The one thing that Gordon Elliott says about Ginto all the time is a dour stare, stays all day, can't get far enough, all that sort of stuff, chaser in the making, all that type of phrases. So why go 2 mile 5 when you can go 3 miles later in the week would be my interpretation of it. The other ones, I think they'll all go for the Supreme, Constitution Hill, John Bon, and Sir Gerhard. If Sir Gerhard does turn up here, I think he's a lay. That's my own personal opinion, because I think he'd be a short price in this. If he turns up here, and I'm not sure, he's so free running and he's always right on the bridle. You just feel, is he going to run out of puff coming up the hill? I think he probably will over this sort of trip. So for me, maybe the De Bromhead horse, Journey With Me, has done nothing wrong. It was a real good performance at Christmas in Leopardstown. He beat 2 decent horses that day. I'd be expecting him at the sort of prices, but we wait and see what the final runners are, because obviously a huge amount of them here at the head of the betting won't run.
I was going to say, Journey With Me, of course, has the option of the Albert Bartlett as well, like many horses engaged in this contest are. Manila Kakuna, Danny, horse you've got a good rapport with and you're enjoying riding this year. Is he a horse you think will be likely to come here, or do you think the 3 mile option for the Albert Bartlett is probably his more likely target?
I thought after riding him in Leopardstown the last day that with his slick jumping, he'd have no issue dropping back in trip. He made the running that day in Leopardstown over 2.6, but 2.5 around Cheltenham would be no issue to him. But I think what Willie was saying in his interviews after the race were that he wouldn't see a reason to come back and trip with him, and that he was thinking towards the Albert Bartlett. All that could change between now and then. I think this race is laid open for Sir Gerhard to run in, and I think if he turns up, he'll win. I'll take on Vincent here and nail my colours to the mast with Sir Gerhard. Going a stride slower, Paul Townend will find a perfect slot, switch him off, he'll jump, and his class will kick in. I think he'd be in a different league to these and should take all the beating. I'd be imagining he would turn up in this race.
Obviously, I feel like I'm flying a solo flag here. But we've got a Challow Hurdle winner in Stage Star. I think it's been a little bit forgotten. He's done absolutely nothing wrong. Walking on Air, if he did line up, I think is the absolute joker in the pack. I mean, it's not ideal going in to a race at the Cheltenham Festival, the back of 1 win over hurdles, but he absolutely won doing handstands at Newbury. It sounds like he's going to this. Nico de Boinville will be on board. Obviously, Nicky Henderson with 70 Cheltenham Festival winners on his CV, probably knows what he's doing more than me. Anyway, so yeah, I think this is, as I think we all agree, this is wide open. This could be anything at the moment. Right, moving on to second race on the card, the Brown Advisory Novices Chase. I mean, what a contest we've possibly got in store here. Again, as is the kind of mantra with a few of these assignments at the moment, we're not entirely sure who is going to be lining up, but we'd have a very good idea that Brave Man's Game is definitely going to this. Will he, won't he, with Galopin Des Champs, I suppose, is the big question we hear from Danny in a moment. Bob Ollinger sounds like it's going to head to the Turners over the 2.5. La Hoy Signor, connections have confirmed that Scottish Raider will line up in this. Long Press 11-2 is also more likely to run in the Turners. And then you're in double figure prices. The rest of the field, Danny Galopin Des Champs. I mean, We saw what he did in the Martin Pipe conditional jockeys hurdle last season. He's gone over fences, and wow, I mean, now and again you get a horse come along when he goes over obstacle, really makes you sit up and take note. And it's been spine tingling what he's managed to produce so far.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable. But the only thing is, he hasn't been truly tested yet. I think Willie has said at his open day that he was leaning towards running him in the 2.5 mile novice chase, the Turners they call it this year, is it?
Yep.
So it probably leaves the door open here for Brave Man's Game. I'm a big fan of Brave Man's Game as well. You know, he's been class in what he's achieved so far this season. He doesn't seem to put a foot wrong. You know, even at Kempton, down to the last, Harry Cobden asked him for a big one. He just said no, in, pop, and went away like a true handicapper. You know, I think he's a very good horse. He was behind Bob Ollinger last year in the Ballymore, and were Bob Ollinger to take him on here, I think Brave Man's Game with his jumping could turn it around. Of the others, I think Capodanno is still fairly interesting. I would have loved to see him get a lot further in Leopardstown. You know, the way he improved from Naas to Punchestown was fantastic. He was only 4.5 lengths behind Bob Ollinger in Punchestown, and that's a fairly strong bit of form. Bar any of the horses, you know, that have been behind Gallop and the Champ, I think that's one of the best bits of form coming out of Ireland, and that could give Brave Man's Game something to think about here. Nichol's horses were, you know, reported not to be not running well. His strike rate was bad through the winter. Brave Man's Game kept winning and kept getting the job done. So to think that Brave Man's Game could improve with the whole team from Ditchet, he might be untouchable, but if you're looking for one to take him on, I think Capodanno is the one for me.
Yeah, fascinating each way play there, around 8-1 for Danny Mullins. I mean, I gave Gallop in the Shop the big build-up, Stephen, in terms of his jumping. Jumping is the name of the game, and I mean, Brave Man's Game has been absolutely electric. I mean, I don't think I'll get carried away in saying that. Is it in the back of your mind? He's been doing it on flat tracks, Newbury's, Kemptons, etc. Over hurdles last year at the Cheltenham Festival was slammed and fairly put in his place. But do you take that kind of with a pinch of salt that he is now a bigger, stronger, more imposing type, and you just think, look, he's a better chaser and he's the one to beat?
Absolutely. I mean, he won at Newton Abbot in October. I've never seen anything like it. I know that Newton Abbot, and people turn their noses up at it. He gained about a length at every fence. He just winged his way around, a complete natural first look, and he's not really done anything to change that impression since. The only thing I'll say is he's probably quite closely matched with Ahoy Senor. Ahoy Senor has run twice right-handed. He was beaten when he unseated at Carlisle, and he never really went a yard at Kempton. He made a series of niggly mistakes, and Brave Man's Game was always running over him. Ahoy Senor's since gone to Wetherby and jumped superbly left-handed from the front in a weak race. I don't think there's that much between them, and both of them would be fine on soft ground. It's just what Ireland sends over. That it's always at the back of your mind when you're talking about these English horses, and we've done it earlier with Edward Stone and Third Time Lucky. They've been beating each other in small fields, and you just sense the form in Ireland is a lot more competitive and a lot stronger. So I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't much between Brave Man's Game and Ahoy Senor, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the Irish runners, whatever turns out to be a lot stronger than both of them.
Vincent, we see from that graphic there, you're keen on the chances of Brave Man's Game. I mean, we're going back to Gallop in the Shop, because I say that was breathtaking, wasn't it? That chase debut. Danny does make a good point that he hasn't really been put under pressure or anything asked of him yet. I mean, do you see him going the 3 mile route, or do you think they will perhaps look at the stiff 2.5 or the new course for galloping?
Yeah, well, Willie was fairly adamant the other day when there was a press open morning that he was going for the other race, going to take on Bob Ollinger and the Turners. And okay, we know Willie changes his mind a lot of times between now and the festival. God knows what will happen between some of his runners. But at the same time, if that's his opinion now, maybe he sticks with it. And if that's the case, Brave Man's Game is going to be very hard to beat. Brave Man's Game admittedly wasn't any match for Bob Ollinger this time last year over hurdles at the festival, and came into it a fancied runner, same as he does this time, but didn't live up to the mark on the day. Having said that, he looks a very, very good chaser. And everything coming out of Paul Nicholls' mouth about him, comparing him to Denman and everything else, it makes you think, look, they seem to have the real deal now. They found the key to him. Everything works well when you throw him over fences. He's a beautiful jumper. He's going to be very hard to beat in this, particularly with the fact that maybe our 2-star performers aren't going to be here. They're going to be in the other race. Having said that, as Danny mentioned, that Capodanno's not a bad horse. It gave Bob Ollinger a run for his money in Punchestown. Admittedly, there were a few fences omitted that day due to low sun, which isn't ideal at this time of year for these novices. You want to see them jump as many as they can. So Capodanno, maybe with a clear round of jumping, everything going well, he'd be a contender, certainly at an each way price. But the way it's shaping up with where the best of the Irish are going to run in the other race, I'd be thinking Brave Man's Game could be one for the English here.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of races which are shaping up nicely, the Champion Chase, of course, arguably could be the race of the entire Cheltenham Festival, with Shishkin and Energumene looking to have another rematch from the absolute ding-dong battle at Ascot back in January. A lot of rumours in the build-up to this, weren't there? Energumene, a few alarm bells going out. I believe Willie Mullins has come out today and say, yeah, the horse, Energumene, had a stone bruise 5 or 6 days ago. Since then, Ruby Walsh has sat on him, ridden him out, and he seems absolutely fine. Danny, we come to you on this one. As I mentioned, it was an absolute a belter, wasn't it? Shishkin versus Energumene at Ascot. I mean, do you see it kind of going to script again this time round, or what's your view on Energumene? Do you think he's got more to offer? Could he pull a bit of a rabbit out of a hat here?
I think the race in Ascot was fantastic between the two, Shishkin and Energumene. Energumene jumped, travelled, stopped the race at the last that day, and you'd have a fair job convincing anybody that Shishkin was going to win, but he still managed to get the job done. I don't see a reason at the moment as to how Energumene can turn that around. I'm sure Willie will have a chat, and a new plan will be made and they'll attack again. I think it's possibly, that form will hold up, but to me, the older horse, Chacun Pour Soi, I think he can get his chance at winning the Champion Chase. The first year he went over, he had a stone bruise, he missed the race, he was fine 24 hours later. Then the next year, Politolog was a late non-runner. The pace in the race completely collapsed. They went steady. It was a bunch finish. He led over the last and just got ran out of it. I think this is going to be a very truly run Champion Chase. And I think Chacun Pour Soi is going to get his chance to put his name on the trophy.
That's fascinating insight. I mean, I suppose he's got the kind of age bias against him, and also the someone coined it the beef or salmon bias against him, and the fact that whenever he's got on the ferry and come over here, things haven't come right. I mean, Danny, do you think there's too much being made of that, or do you think there is slightly in the back of your mind that at Sandown he ran possibly the worst races of his career? At Cheltenham, it looked for 90% of the races if he was going to win half the track, but it didn't. I mean, do you think there's too much being made of it, or do you think there possibly is something not all horses take to travelling?
I think there's too much to be made of it. It ran too bad to be true in the Tingle Creek. Willie's horses hadn't been on fire mid-November, early December. We just hadn't had any rain in Ireland. The gallop wasn't really soft enough to have them at peak performance. Last year, they went far too slow in the Champion Chase, and Nube Negra, was he in front of him or a length behind him? It was very close to him. Yeah. Then you look at him in Punchestown, where Chacun and Allaho went a proper gallop, and Nube Negra was left 25 lengths behind that day. I think with a truly run race, you'll really get a chance to see the real Chacun this year, and he's the one I think can win the race.
Tactically with Chacun Pour Soi, would you want to play him really late, or would you want to try draw the sting out of Shishkin? What would you be doing?
I'd imagine, he'll bounce out good and handy. If there's no strong pace on, there's every chance he could make his own run and make it a quite a strong gallop. But if somebody else jumps out to go a mad gallop, he'll be able to sit in, travel behind him, move into the race down the hill, and keep pouring it on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Stephen, speaking of mad gallop, I mean, I think this race will be running at a proper pace, won't it? If you've got the old boy Politolog in there, it sounds like Put the Kettle On's going to run. I think Gary Moore's absolute tear away. Lovely horse, Editor de Guit's going to line up as well. So this is going to be like a 6 furlong sprint from the get-go here. I mean, how do you see this race unfolding?
I think it's made for Shishkin. I mean, he did absolutely everything wrong at Ascot. As usual, De Boinville secured the car park route 6 wide. He made a bad blunder at the wrong time, stumbled. He picked up for pressure. Cheltenham's his track. It's left-handed, steep uphill finish. It'll bring him into it. If they go a fast pace, I think he'll win. I think he went out to odds against earlier in the week. Obviously, Enugamin's had a bit of a wobble on the exchanges, perhaps, but that was a very big price. I think he's going to be the whole public's nap. From a fascinating betting point of view, Tony Bloom owns Enugamin. I think they were absolutely mortified. He got beaten at Ascot. He had the complete run of the race, which he definitely won't get at Cheltenham. I'd be very surprised if that form wasn't upheld. I think Shishkin will beat Enugamin by a lot further. I think it's a good thing. It's just Nico is rather making me shake a bit of the prospect at a short price. I think Danny's been very charitable about Chacun Pour Soi. I mean, I didn't think they went particularly... I mean, they didn't go mad gallop last year. It was a very poor renewal. Chacun was in the absolute box seat throughout up the inside, cruised round, 13.08 on, got to the hill and stopped. And I thought at Sandown, he went like a horse with something wrong with him. I mean, he stopped. He was absolutely legless at Sandown. Now, the horses might not have been right. I don't know. Maybe he went amiss. And also, he bounced back to form in Ireland last time. Well, he raced wide and the ground was 300 yards better wide. But nobody had told Bryony Frost that day. Greenerton was parked up the inside in the super glue. And basically, Chacun had a solo trial. So I wouldn't say that represented a bounce back to form for Chacun. I will be absolutely stunned if they both get round and Shishkin doesn't beat Chacun Pour Soi by a very long way, personally. But we'll play this back and Danny can come on, give me a rub down when the form gets completely reversed.
I'm enjoying this difference of opinion here. Vincent, how do you sit with this one? Do you see any weaknesses? I mean, look, 4 to 6, so 8 to 11 there or thereabouts. Shishkin, do you think that's the right price for him?
Well, at the moment, it probably is with the doubt about Energamy. Just Stone Bruise, okay, it's only a Stone Bruise, but you just don't like anything like this in the run-up to it. We're only 11 days away from the start of Cheltenham. You don't want to hear these things about your horses having problems. That's a worry for me because I thought Energamy had a chance of reversing here. The main reason I was putting it down to was this race is almost a furlong shorter than the Tingle Creek. So that alone has to be a help. As Danny says, if you'd have stopped that last race with the two of them at the last fence, there's only one winner. There's absolutely only one winner. Even halfway up the run-in, you would think Energamy was going to beat Shishkin. Shishkin out-battled him in the end, got there and won, but over almost a furlong shorter, not quite sure he's going to get there, depending on how the race is run and everything else. One thing I'd like to hear from Danny is, what does he think Paul will ride in this?
I'm not sure. What Willie had said was he thought Chacun was his number one horse in the race, and Paul's ridden them all. I'm sure he's waiting to see late on. If I were Paul, I'd ride Chacun Pour Soi, but he'll make that decision late on.
Fair enough.
A lot of confidence here behind Chacun Pour Soi. It's interesting. Look at this. I think Nube Negra can pick up the pieces and run into a place at a price because, as we said, I think there'll be a mad old tear up in the head of affairs. What I find quite funny here, though, is got 4 different selections on the Champion Chase. I thought this was a 2-minute job with 4 of us on Shishkin, or at least 3 of us on Shishkin. But anyway, yeah, really, really fascinating count to this. Should hopefully they all get there because it really will be one of the races of the Cheltenham Festival, if not the one race. If you're just going to watch one race, someone who's never seen horse racing before and wants to watch one race at the Cheltenham Festival, I think this is pretty much it. Top class 2-mile chasers going hammer and tongs. We'll move on to the concluding race on the Wednesday, which of course is the Champion Bumper. Facile Vega is your market leader, 11 to 10. American Mike done very little wrong, 11 to 4. Redemption Day was impressive over the Christmas period, 6 to 1. Mercury 12s, James's Gate 12s, and then you're into the bigger prices. Danny, I mean, you've probably got a better insight than all of us here. In fact, you will have a better insight than all of us here. Regards to Facile Vega, obviously, Q Vega is a horse. She has her own tapas bar, doesn't she, at Cheltenham Racecourse now? An absolute a Cheltenham legend. And, I mean, Facile Vega, it's very early days, but on what we've seen so far, you've got to be getting really excited.
Yeah, he looked awesome winning at Leopardstown the last day. He's won twice in Leopardstown, but that win at the Dublin Festival where he just seemed to ease away. The second horse has since got beaten, so maybe that form is slightly questioned, but the manner in which he done it, you can't but be taken by that. But the only thing about the bumper is so many of these young horses are developing at different speeds to others. There's always a chance of one popping up here. Facile Vega, he works very well at home. He looks in great shape. Dave Porter rides him all the time, and he couldn't be happier with him. But just at the price, I think you have to look elsewhere. American Mike, he's one Gordon Elliott has been talking up all the time. He worked behind Florin Porter in Fairy House a couple of weeks ago, and Jamie Codd was quite impressed with him that day. I thought it was a decent schooling race. So, the fact that he hasn't been seen since late December, I think it was Navan he ran in. He looks in great shape from that bit of work in Fairy House. And Redemption Day, I wouldn't rule him out either. I think it's possibly the one that Paul Townend is going to side with here. He was very impressive winning in Leopardstown, beat another one of Gordon's and Henry's that day, but moved clear very easily that day. And had he run in the bumper where Facile Vega ran at the Dublin Festival, I think there's a good chance he could have won in the same manner, and you'd have the prices flipped around for both of those horses. So to me, of the short ones, I think a lot of the value is in Redemption Day.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, bolted up the last one.
He bolted up, and Mercury is also another one for Willie. Won 4-year-old bumper in Goran, but 4-year-olds have a very weak record in the bumper. Was Q Card possibly the last one to win it, I think? So that's a big negative towards him. Mercury was very impressive that day in Goran. The second horse was well backed on the day as well and ran out quite an impressive winner. And you're getting down to the next 10 of Willie's bumper horses that you could give a good shout out to, but Madman's Game, possibly the least visually impressive that won on the track, but his work at home is very good. He could be, of the others, the one that represents a bit of value.
Do you have any idea if you'll be picking up a ride in this race, Danny?
Hopefully, if Willie runs between 5 and 10 of them, he might put me on one.
Yeah, but nothing cast in stone yet then from that comment.
No, Willie won't make any of those decisions till late on. We'll be over there, and he'll just pop us down a few horses.
Oh, brilliant. Great stuff. Vincent, is there a danger here with Facile Vega? We all have very short memories, it seems, sometimes. That Kilcrut looked absolutely invincible coming into last year's champion bumper. And, of course, there was a little bit of silence amongst the betting ring when he didn't get the job done. Around even money, is it in a bumper, what I'm trying to say to you, is this the type of race you think that price is justified? Or as Danny does make a very good point, so many unexposed types in here you can just suddenly come from out of the woodwork. Is it a race you'd probably want to just stay clear of from a betting perspective?
Well, the first thing is, of all the races, I know that the Queen Mother Champion Chase looks like one of the races of the week, but so does this bumper, because we're seeing some exceptional looking talent coming through here. Facile Vega, admittedly, looks absolute top drawer, very hard to see the horse beat, but then you have Gordon Elliott and Jamie Cobb particularly so keen on American Mike, and what American Mike did that day in Navan was equally as impressive, visually anyway. And then you've got Redemption Day, you've got Mercury, and then the one I like is a horse called James's Gate. Now, bumpers are normally races in Ireland that punters love them, but so do bookmakers. They get some amount of favourites turned over in these races in Ireland. And this James's Gate ran in Punchestown, admittedly a while ago, but back from 11 to 8 into 2 to 5. That takes some money in the bumper to back one into that shorter price, 2 to 5 for a bumper, and it hacks up by 8 lengths. Could be anything if that turned up as well. But there are so many of them in here that could be anything, and that's the whole point, isn't it? We just don't know how good all of them are. And as Danny says, these horses are improving at different rates, and we haven't seen some of them for quite a few months, so you'd never know what the story is by the time they turn up. I certainly wouldn't be backing Facile Vega at anything near even money. I think that's a terrible price.
Of course, Stephen, a lot of these raw and exposed types have got to handle the preliminaries, which will be an absolute shock to a few of them, I think it's fair to say. You with or against the favourite here?
I'll be making a book here, Ed. These are brilliant races for bookmakers. It's around a dog track. There's trouble in running. There's going to be a big field. They've all got huge reputations. And 11 to 10 and 11 to 4 is 3 to 1 on coupled. Well, there's a lot of 3 to 1 on chances in life. If you want to bet 3 to 1 on the front two in a 20-runner Cheltenham bumper round that dog track, not for me. I'll have to put my bookmaker, fill the hod up, crack away, and pray you get a result. That being said, Ed, it's a brilliant race to watch. As you know, there'll be 10 winners come out of the race next time out over hurdles next season. It's a brilliant race. And this year, it looks better than ever. The front two have got massive, massive reputations, and there's a handful of other horses with similar reputations as well. But no, I'm going to be a bookmaker. 11 to 10, 11 to 4. It's 3 to 1 on coupled. You've got to fill the hod up. And I think a lot of bookmakers will be thinking the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for what it's worth, I've gone with Redemption Day. Of course, the form got a boost recently, didn't it, with Music Drive winning the other day. I think that's pretty strong form. And I was looking at Redemption Day's breeding from the very soft ground kind of orientated family. So if our reliable weather expert Danny Mullins is spot on with the deluge of rains we're going to get in the build-up, I think that will only enhance the credentials of that individual. Anything else on the cars that day, Danny, you think you might be riding, or anything we think we should be looking out for? Let's perhaps go a little bit under the radar.
I'm not sure where he runs. His state man is in the Coral Cup. His possibility of going for the Martin Pipe as well. Yeah. But wherever he turns up, he shows plenty at home. A mark of 141 looks okay for him. And I think, but whatever handicap he goes into, state man would be one I'd like to keep on my side, possibly the Coral Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's quite interesting. Speaking to a few of my bookmaker friends, as soon as he was allotted 141 in the weights unveiling at Cheltenham earlier in the week, there was smoke billowing out of their machines. He was cut pretty much the favourite for every race he's entered in. I think he's got away with one there. Vincent, we come to you. Handicaps on the Wednesday. Anything else? We've got the cross country, of course, Tiger Roll's final ever races. It's all going on the Wednesday, isn't it?
Well, one quick one for Danny around this is the Coral Cup. There's a horse that's entered in that and the Martin Pipe of Willie's called 5 O'Clock. That's a very interesting horse. Hasn't run since Cheltenham 2 years ago. Finished 7th in the Martin Pipe that day, back from 14s into 7 to 1. Got hampered and rider lost irons in that race. He's entered here. We haven't seen him in 2 years. And he's been very well treated by the handicapper. He's one of the few Irish horses that's actually been dropped 3 pounds by the English handicapper, which, if he's still alive, which I presume he is, though we haven't seen him for 2 years, the fact that he's got entries, he must be there somewhere. Have you seen him at all, Danny? How's he going?
Yeah, he seems to be tipping away well. I know he'd schooled a couple of times over fences. He possibly had an entry in a beginner's chase a couple of weeks back. Willie decided against that, possibly citing a go at a handicap like this. I won on him his penultimate start in Thurles. He was very impressive in the Michael Purcell novice hurdle that day, and I would have given him a big chance in the conditional race, the Martin Pipe, at Cheltenham 2 years ago. Just as you say, met the trouble in running, but ran off a mark of 145 that day. Hasn't been seen for 2 years, but dropped down to 141. Without running again. I think that the mark is right. If he turns up, he could be one at a bigger price, yeah.
Vincent, you were very polite, shirking that question off to Danny there. You're not going to get away with it. Come on, let's get you off the fence. The rest of the Wednesday, there must be something in here which you're really chomping at the bit to let us know about.
Yeah, in fairness, I don't really like the handicaps on Wednesday. Personally, I thought they're very hard, but that 5 o'clock definitely sticks out as something that could be hiding in amongst them. The other one then, I thought there was a mad one in the Grand Annual. A horse called Bundoran. Loves it here. He's an 11-year-old now, trained by Tom George. He was second in the race in 2019, third in 2020 in a poor champion chase, third of 5, admittedly. But he was rated 160 only a little over a year ago, and he's now rated 131. So it's sort of a horse at a huge price. Maybe he'd come up and show us something. The one bet I thought, the real bet of the day on this second day on the Wednesday, was the horse that Danny mentioned earlier, Shakin Poursois. You can get him at odds against without the 2 favourites, without Energamine and Shishkin on markets. On the Betfair exchange, he's as big as nearly 7 to 4. That seems a huge price. He started 8 to 13 to beat the very same horses. If you take out the top 2, he started 8 to 13 to beat those very same horses last year. horses like Nupa Negra and put the kettle on. So 7-4 seems unbelievable on the exchange, him without the other two.
Okay, a lot of confidence. This is the Chacun Pour Soir show, isn't it? Really, I was not expecting this. Well, Stephen, I know you'll be against that viewpoint, but on the rest of the card, anything else which you think we should be keeping an eye on? And what is your best bet on the Wednesday of the Cheltenham Festival?
The best bet was Shishkin, who I think has gone to a very fair price on the exchanges now, about 5-4 on, something like that. Bundoran, Vincent mentioned, well, he's got more seconds than Oliver Twist, doesn't he, on his card? And if Chacun Pour Soir gets up the hill on soft ground in a race that's 10 times better than last year's Champion Chase, age 10, I'll be absolutely stunned. So we've got a difference of opinion here, haven't we? I won't be coming on for a few weeks after Cheltenham at this rate. No, I thought the one that was interesting, we touched them already. Danny mentioned him for the Arkle on day one, and that's Cursublime, who's in the Grand Annual around 10 or 12-1. Only had 3 runs over fences, jumped really well, routed the field at a time when Henry de Bromheads were completely dead a month or 2 ago. Been laid out for this race, I hope, and I think he's on a really attractive mark. The key with the Grand Annual is they go a mad gallop and stop usually, and Cursublime's a strong stayer who'll get a patient ride, and I thought he was probably one of the better bets on the day.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. I actually quite like Buddy Rich in the Grand Annual as well. But I'm going to throw in here Comprond for the Philip Hobbs team in the Gold Cup. Those who've got nothing to do in their life, like myself, sit there at 11 o'clock at night going through weights and handicap measures. And he needs 19 to come out in order to get in. I think there's a chance he will just sneak in as long as the ground's not too soft. I think Comprond's got a massive chance. He's a previous course winner off a mark of 140, still unexposed, and I think he's ticking a lot of the right boxes. Well, many thanks for your input there, gentlemen. Some fascinating differences of opinions, what we like to hear. Stay tuned, because we'll be kicking off with the Thursday action very soon. Well, we're going to look ahead to the Thursday of the Cheltenham Festival now, and all the action will kick off at 1:30 with the Turner's Novices Chase. What a belter this could be, potentially with Bob Ollinger, Galopin de Champs, L'Homme Presse, all in the shake-up here. Could be something to really look forward to. Again, like a lot of these races in the anti-post build-up, bit of will he, won't he, who will go where. A bit of cat and mouse, Danny, I think it's fair to say. But Galopin de Champs against Bob Ollinger, those two do line up. That really is a race to savour.
Yeah, it definitely is. You know, Galopin de Champs, he's been very good in what he's achieved so far. The only thing I'd have to say, hasn't been really pressed so far. He's done everything at his ease. It'll be interesting to see what happens once he comes under real pressure. You'd hope that he'd come through that test, but it remains to be seen if he will. Bob Ollinger and L'Homme Presse will definitely make him think about it here. I think Bob Ollinger is possibly the best horse in the race, but his jumping for me just isn't fantastic over a fence. He was good in Gorn until we quickened up a lot down over the last 3, and he landed quite steep at a few of those. Then the next day in Punchestown, Rachel nursed him around, and a good few of the fences that day were taken out with the sun in the back straight as well. So I think Bob Ollinger's jumping just needs to sharpen. While he's probably got the biggest engine, I think his jumping could be his Achilles heel here. And for that reason, if there's going to be one to beat Galopin de Champs, I think it could be Venetia Williams' horse.
Yeah, interesting. What you were going to say, Galopin de Champs hasn't been pressed yet. Well, L'Homme Presse would be just the horse to do that, because Danny, he'll go from the front. He'll make this a test. There'll be no hiding place here. I think we're all in agreement. And this is a horse who perhaps is a little bit underrated in the market, in my view. Yeah,
I'd say he definitely is. You know, the fact that they think the Irish horses are untouchable, you know, it's probably making him a slightly bigger price and maybe a bit better value. You know, and I don't think he'll beat Galopin de Champs, but you know, there's definitely a lot more value there. That win in the Scilly Isles last day was decent. Good performance at New Year's Day in Cheltenham to win going away that day as well. So definitely a horse with a lot of potential.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Vincent, we touch upon Bob Ollinger. Now, there's a little bit of the vibes of perhaps Envoy Allen from last year. You know, a horse who'd had three, we knew was a brilliant novice hurdler. Had three starts over fences at 1-4, 1-6, 1-8. You know, barely had to come out first gear to win them. And it was just that novice inexperience. And, he came a cropper on the day at the Cheltenham Festival. Obviously, Bob Ollinger, in terms of chasing experience, you'd argue, I suppose galloping the shop, you could argue as well, but for a horse who doesn't, as Danny says, he doesn't wow you in the jumping department, is there a worry he is light on experience in that side of things coming into this race?
Yeah, somewhat there is. But having said that, he's trained by Henry de Bromhead, who is the best trainer of horses to jump fences that I've ever seen. And they jump better than anyone else's generally. So you'd like to think he's had 2 goes so far over fences. The first day in Gowran Park, the only mistakes, he jumped beautifully all the way around. The only mistakes were a slight mistake at the third last, slight mistake at the last. And I'm sure Danny would tell you, those 3 fences in the straight in Gowran are tricky fences. You're hitting the first of them downhill, I think, turning in. And then, of course, the last fence is always going to be an issue for any horse in a race, generally, because they're getting tired at that stage. I didn't think there was much wrong there. I just wanted to see him do it all cleanly the next day. And then that was a bit of a non-event somewhat with Capodanno in Punchestown because of the sun, that we lost three or four fences down the back. That's not a good thing. For a novice, particularly on the second start, you wanted to see him jump as many fences as possible and jump them as well as he could. Having said that, I've no doubt he can jump and he will jump well. He was brilliant over hurdles in Cheltenham last year. He was one of the real stars of the show last year at Cheltenham. Having said that, the de Bromhead horses were absolutely on fire at that stage. So they're not quite on fire now. You'd like to think they're going to come back and do their best in 2 weeks' time. But there's a slight question mark around that. Galopin Des Champs, on the other hand, he's looked absolutely exceptional over hurdles, over fences. His hurdle win, he won here last year at the festival as well over hurdles. So he's got festival form. He was most impressive on his 2 chase starts. He looks a real talent. Coming back in trip shouldn't be much of a problem from him here. He's only slightly back in trip anyway if he goes for this Turners, which Willie Mullins is now indicating he will. And it's very hard to split the pair of them. I suppose if I had to come down one side of the fence, I'd come down Galopin Des Champs personally.
Right, interesting stuff here. I was going to come to you there, Stephen. As we see that graphic, how do you kind of split the big 3, if you like? And I mean, outside of we're talking about 3 horses here, essentially. It's not a 3-horse race. Is there a lurker in the pack we should perhaps be looking out for?
I don't think there is, to be honest. I think it is 3 runners. I hope the front 2 turn up. It's a brilliant battle. I think Bob Ollinger's got the best race makeup here because L'Empresse is definitely a front runner. And I think Galopin Des Champs is as well, really. Maybe wouldn't have to, but has done twice over fences so far. Quite a keen going horse. If they didn't lead it, it might not settle, perhaps. So I thought Bob Ollinger was a standout contender. He's been winning when Henry de Bromhead hasn't, which is a big positive. Soft ground will really suit him. One negative, perhaps, for L'Empresse has been beating the same horses when you read back through his form. A very, very good jumper. Who wants to go left-handed. I think he'll be better left-handed, as he showed when winning at Cheltenham. He did go that way a little bit when winning at Sandown. The negative for L'Empresse is stable form. Venetia got a well-documented bug in the yard. That's not ideal 2 weeks before Cheltenham. Now, she has had a winner at Doncaster today when we're doing the recording, but that's her first in 23 runners. And they've not been big prices. There's been a lot of horses running absolutely diabolical. So the fact she's got a bug in the yard, the horse is shortened right up L'Empresse as well, obviously with doubts about one of the front 2 running in the race. I thought Bob Ollinger was probably an absolute certainty. Now Galopin Des Champs looks like he's going to run. He obviously isn't. He's going to be a much bigger price, but I think he's the one to decide. Henry de Bromhead has had 3 winners in the last fortnight. I don't think he's too worried. I think they're coming right at the right time.
Yeah, still, we're still waiting to see who does line up officially here, but it will be a wonderful spectacle. Just a horse I want to just flag up here for you, Danny. If he did line up, he'd carry my 5p each way. That is Jungle Boogie, a horse who absolutely bolted up on his chase debut, really imposing sort. I mean, I listened to Willie Mullins' comments, says he's incredibly talented, but also incredibly fragile. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, Jungle Boogie, a horse with a big engine, as you say, incredibly fragile, ran in November 20 in a bumper, February 21 in a hurdle, and wasn't seen again till New Year's Day 2022.
Yeah.
He seems to be in good shape. He's came out of Fairy House well. And I'd say it's probably been a tactical move for Willie to mind him, not run him at the Dublin Festival and go straight to Cheltenham to let him show what, the potential is there. His homework is very good.
Well, I was to say nothing's got near him on the racecourse, has it? That's my point. He's a bit of an unknown in many quantities, isn't he?
Nobody truly knows how good he is, but is that better than Long Press, Galloping the Champ, and Bob Ollinger? That's a serious question to ask, and
no. Probably not. But he's 14 to 1,
know.
so I thought I'd flag him up. I mean, do you think it'd be a 3 miler or 2.5 miler? Any preference on him? He won over 2.6, didn't he, or there or thereabouts last time out?
Yeah, he won over that trip in Fairy House. I think with his class, I'd imagine 2.5, 2.5 is probably ideal for him. Maybe in better races in the future, he might start going towards the 3 mile route if he's going to develop into a Gold Cup horse. But who knows? I'd be siding with the shorter priced ones here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the general consensus on the Turners, which it will be an excellent way to kick off proceedings on the Thursday. The Ryanair Chase is the next grade one we're covering. On paper, this is many people's banker of the week. It is Allaho 4-6, a Nergamine, very unlikely runner, you'd have to say, 11-4, along with Aplutard and Shaka Boursois, which then leads you down to Chamblou at 8-1. Then we're 9's Bar. Stephen, to come to you first on this one. This race is going to cut up. Surely Allaho's got to jump, whatever it is, 16 fences, 14 fences to win. He's not only he was amazing last year, but he's maintained his form. His performance of thumping Fakir Derry last time out has been well advertised, and I'm trying to find a problem with him, and I'm struggling.
No, I agree. I think this is another one of these horses, a bit like Honeysuckle earlier in the week, and one or two others that we've mentioned. I could just see them going straight through. They've been priced up lazily by the bookmakers. Most of these aren't going to run. They're betting to about 280% at the moment, but because there's 5 or 6, the next 5 in the betting are definitely not going to run. And there isn't really a second in. Chamblou, maybe, not been seen out since taking that heavy fall at Wetherby. I'd be stunned if Chamblou is within a stone of Allaho, to be truthful. I mean, last year at the festival, Allaho was the most impressive winner of the whole week. I've never seen anything like it. It went off absolutely like the clappers, jumped brilliantly and had the race won after a mile. It was a destructive performance. It was good to soft then. I should think it'll be a bit more testing, and that'll probably suit Allaho. I think he'll soon have these in trouble and they won't see him. And I think he'll come home alone. I think he's an absolute... I mean, I think if you can get sort of 5-4 on the exchanges now, you could probably do a lot worse than lock that in. He's the sort of horse who'll end up 2-1 on, putting on the day. The whole world will have him in every multiple. And I'll be very disappointed if he gets beat, to be honest with you.
Well, it's just an interesting viewpoint. Just to find a point on that, Stephen. I mean, from the bookmaker's perspective, Shishkin and Allaho are the same price to win at the Cheltenham Festival. If you took away prices in anything, I would have thought Allaho's chances much better winning the Ryanairs than Shishkin's is of winning the Champion Chase, even though I think Shishkin will win the Champion Chase. Allaho's got nothing to beat here, has he? What's he got to beat Allaho?
I mean, Energamine, they're closely matched, aren't they? There's a length or so between them, and they bet 10 on Energamine at Ascot, so clearly they are quite closely matched. Whereas Allaho has not got a second in. I mean, Chamblou is Chamblou. He'd have won by 3 fences at Wetherby. He took a horrible fall. He's not been seen since. He comes here fresh. That's always been the aim, but I couldn't dream him being in the same class. Allaho, of course, do you remember, Ed, forget about last year's route, the year before behind Champ, he was the unluckiest loser ever. The whole world was on, and he stumbled at the wrong time, just as he was coming through to win. I think he was desperate, but he's gone the right way in Ireland. He's a tough, bold front runner. And here's the other thing. Cheltenham's slightly different. First of all, Allaho's going to scare them all off. Secondly, they all know Allaho's going to lead, and nothing's going to be driving Allaho mad because they're just going to ruin their own chances. So I think it'll be a soft lead, soon led, jump well, in command halfway. It's a lesser race this year by the look of it than it was last.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would echo those kind of sentiments. Danny, a very uncomplicated horse. To someone obviously who's never had anything to do with Allaho in terms of hands-on, he seemed to just point him at the fences, let him go, and he jumps and he travels. And that's what we saw to maximum effect in this race 12 months ago.
Yeah, he was very good. As you touched on already, the price versus the opposition, he seems real value here. The interesting one, I think, I don't know where he runs, but Asterion Furlonge, he's actually drifting for this race now, but he looked like he was maybe going to give him a race in the John Durkan in Punchestown. And were he to line up in the race, could he be a solid each way bet? Over 3 miles, he's looked like he's been always travelling well and tipped up and had his jumping issues, missed a few fences late in Leopardstown the last day, but quiet ride in the Ryanair over 2.5. I think there could be a lot of value at 14-1 to pick up the pieces.
The word solid and Asterion Furlonge in the same sense. It's not something most people would normally associate with those two going together. Vincent, Allaho, it looks his to lose. Do you see a chink in his armour? If so, who's going to exploit it?
There's no real chink. Now, he has got beaten twice in Cheltenham at the festival before, but last year he was awesome. When he came here as a novice, the horse that beat him was Minella Indo, and then he got beaten by Champ, who's a fair yardstick as well. So last season he was brilliant at Cheltenham alone, not necessarily all season long, but this season he's come back and he's looked really good. The John Durkan run looked poor-ish at the time, but the way it's worked out, that race has worked out unbelievably well. And then he came out the last day in Thurles and put Fakir Didarius in his place again. A horse he'd beaten 12 lengths in this race last year. He beats him 12 lengths again or whatever in Thurles. And then that horse comes out and wins again in the UK since. So everything looks very solid. It's impossible to see anything beating him. But having said that, there's only ever been one odds-on chance in this race before, which was Unda So from the same yard. It had won the race in 2017, came back as an odds-on chance a year later and got stuffed. So that's the only negative I can find. There is no other negative. The horse looks seriously good. The other one, Danny mentioned Asterion Furlonge, not for me anywhere ever. The way he jumps, why back a horse who can't jump is the bottom line. There's plenty of other opportunities during the week to back something and take your chance. So, I think you're throwing your money away on him personally. He lets you down every single day without fail.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I'm going to throw in Eldorado Allen at 14s each way if he ran into third. I wouldn't be shocked there. I was impressed by the way he improved, stepping up in trip at Newbury last time out. And again, as we've touched upon, this race could easily cut up to a 7-8 runner affair. And I think Allaho will win. And Eldorado Allen could follow him home for a rejuvenated Colin Tizard team. Or Colin, incidentally, in his final season with a licence before he hands the licence over to son Joe. Right, we'll move on to the Stayers Hurdle now, which is a race our special guest Danny Mullins clearly has fond memories of, and hopefully, in his view, we'll have even more memories of. Flooring Porter, your 7-2 market leader to win the feature race on the Thursday. Time held 9-2. Classical Dream 5-1. Champ 11-2. Paisley Park 6s. You're looking at double figures. The rest, Danny, will come to you first. Flooring Porter, obviously 12 months ago, magical scenes. Things let's be blunt, haven't quite gone to plan so far this season, but he has got the been there and done it factor in the book.
Yeah, definitely. He has his quirks. I thought before tipping up in Navan, he probably would have held on to win that race. Things, he didn't get a clean crack at it in Leopardstown, but I think that Leopardstown form is probably a stronger bit of form than when he won the race last year in Cheltenham. So I think that's a step forward. He's a 7-year-old. He was only 6 when he won it last year. I think he still could be on the way up. And with a clean run round, I think he has a very good chance of retaining his crown here. Classical Dream was good on his comeback to beat him in Leopardstown at Christmas, but flopped badly in Gorn. His Classical's form off a break had been good. He won in Punchestown last year. It'll be a bit of magic from Willie, to come back again. He looks very good in what he's doing at home, but that it's a big negative for him, that run in Gorn the last day. The English horses, there's probably very little between them. Time Hill Champ and Paisley Park, they're all closely enough matched on their form, and they've been taking each other on, all decent types. But I'd hope the form of the Leopardstown run at Christmas of Florin Porter and Classical Dream might be a little bit stronger than that, but it's no foregone conclusion at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, Florin Porter as a character, what's he like as a horse? He comes across like he's a bit fizzy, he's a bit quirky, he's got his own ideas about the game. Is that true? I mean, is he like that off the course, or is it just he comes alive once he goes down the post type of thing?
He's actually a pet in the stable, and then as soon as you get up on him, he starts to come alive underneath you. But the funny thing is, the more he goes through the season, the better he gets. You know, in Cheltenham last year was probably the best he'd behaved all year, and you know, I've sat in him recently in Fairy House, and you know, he behaved himself perfectly there. You know, being out and about for those few days away from home seemed to take the gas out of the system. And yeah, all going well. I wouldn't have any issues heading to Cheltenham. I have every confidence in the horse, and I think he's a great chance of doing it again.
Interesting stuff. That freshness kind of out of him as the season progresses and allows him to settle. Vincent, we spoke about this on previous shows in regards to Florin Porter and Classical Dream. I mean, you just had a theory perhaps that race over the Christmas period took a little bit out of both of them. I mean, you could argue to some extent that's shown up to be quite true with what we saw with Classical Dreams flop in the, was it the Galmoy or whichever race it was last time? I mean, are you looking outside these big two then for the winner?
I am particularly, Danny mightn't want to hear this, but I think the two horses at Christmas, they ran their guts out that day. The thing that gets it for me is Florin Porter had won the same race last year before going on to win the Stayers in Cheltenham. And on similar ground this year against Classical Dream, he ran 33 seconds quicker than he had to win the same race last year. That's a huge amount of time. That's some speed they went for 3 miles around Leopardstown that day. They left all the rest of them out with the washing. It was 20 lengths back to everything else. Half the decent horses in it pulled up. I think that they ran too hard that day, and I think it emptied the pair of them personally. Now, we haven't seen Florin Porter since, so I don't know, but we've seen Classical Dream come out in Gowran Park and flop, and I fear for the pair of those horses personally. The other little negative around Florin Porter for me is Gavin Cromwell's stable form. He's had one winner from his last 94 runners. Like that's disaster coming into Cheltenham for a big stable in Ireland. I know he's a relatively new big stable, but he's one of probably the biggest 4 stables in the country now, national hunt wise. And that's not the form you want coming into it. Having said that, Danny says he rode the horse the other day and it schooled well. You have to go with that. For me, I was fancying an outsider, and this was the horse that finished second to Florin Porter last year, which is Ciel De Neige. I thought he was being lined up for another tilt at it. He'd started 5-1, I think, in the race last year, and he'd won the Pertemps twice before. So I thought he was going to have a go, but it's interesting now. They've switched him back to the Pertemps. They're going to claim off him in the Pertemps, and the same owner has Champ. So presumably Champ is working well, doing everything right. Champ is possibly the best of the English, and that being the case, I thought I'd take a chance on him rather than the 2 Irish, which I think there's question marks to answer on both of them.
Well, it's fascinating stuff. We've seen from that graphic there, Steve, and we were talking about the JP McManus horses. I thought I was throwing in a mad one here, and we've dovetailed nicely. Sporting John, I don't think he's totally out of this. When you look at ratings, they could of course run in the Pertemps off 155, but they've got Cider Burley off 156 in that. I think it's going to be, well, Philip Hobbs said, didn't he, the other day, it's going to be a last-minute decision after a chapter connection as to what they do with him. I don't think he's a daft one here at 14-1, and I gather you probably share my view.
No, I agree. I think on form very closely matched. I agree with what Danny said about the English horses. They're all the same horse. Champ, Paisley Park, Sporting John. They've all been beating each other in turn. Sporting John has perhaps got a little bit more upside. He's won 5 from 7 over hurdles. They gave up on chasing. He actually won the big race at Sandown, didn't he, over fences? But that was a farce of a race. He was tailed off, going nowhere, blundering his way around, and they all stopped. So they curtailed chasing. But he's a prolific winner. He was really impressive at Warwick the other day. Now, people look at that and think, well, it was only a handicap. But I don't think there's much between handicaps and these, over these the graded races and staying handicaps. There's pounds between them. It's sort of snobbery to think, well, he's a handicapper. He's not. I think he could be 20-1. I think Hobbs wants to run him against Champ in the Stairs Hurdle, but it won't be his decision, of course. I wouldn't imagine it'll be the big cheeses at the green and gold colours decide which runs where. And Champ must be a big runner. I was going to ask Danny what he made of the start the other day in Ireland when Flooring Porter finished second, because it was a ridiculous. The winner got an absolute fly, like sort of greyhound out of trap one, and the front two were sort of 20 lengths clear throughout, an absolutely brutal gallop. What happened at the start that they got such a flyer?
Yeah, the start wasn't ideal for me. Yeah, one of those things. Joe Vanahan was the starter, and one of those days, yeah.
One of those days. I think we'll draw a line through that. But from Cheltenham is a different day. It's a fascinating contest. Just finally, Stephen, we'll come back to you on Paisley Park. Where are we with Paisley Park? I mean, I'd written him off. I thought this was he was going to be in for a swan song in the trials day at Cheltenham. And I got to admit, I mean, the reception he got I thought again he was tailed off. He hit that Cheltenham hill and he flew up it. I mean, if you didn't know he was 10 years of age, you'd be saying he's coming in with a real kind of chance. It's the stats gurus are out to throw it in your face and say he's pretty much got no chance. But I mean, if you take that form on face value, he's got to be in the mix again, hasn't he?
Yeah, I could see him running well, sort of finishing well, sort of fourth or fifth again. It'd be great for racing if he won. Of course, he's got an owner with fantastic story, and Emma Lavell's had a really good season. I'd love to see him win. I think he's a very short price now, Paisley Park, single figures. Everything panned out ideally when he beat Champ. I would imagine, if you had a match bet, Champ against Paisley Park, and there were only two runners, Champ would beat Paisley Park by 5 lengths hard on the bridle, wouldn't he? The race just panned out. Right. Sometimes at Cheltenham they go for home too soon and stop before they hit the hill, and things get dragged in from miles out the back of the TV. Well, that was his day, I think, and he's not getting any younger like the rest of us. So it's a fascinating race. This, I suspect, looking at the market now, it's sort of 3-1. This looks at least 5 or 6-1. The field. I think this is a really hard race. If they all turn up, I don't think there's a standout contender, and this is a race. Vincent saying earlier about races where you get results like the Supreme. I remember a horse winning 100-1, not that, probably a decade ago now. This is a race that can throw up a right turn up.
Well, this Nagat Oscar was a 50-1 SP winner, wasn't he? Only 2 or 3 seasons ago. Yeah, can get absolute carnage in this contest. Looking at the rest of the card, and I'm coming to you first, Danny. Just a horse or mare I'd like to flag up here. I thought there might be a chance you end up riding her in the Mare's Novices. That's a Statuaire, of course. She won the Royal Bond in really good style. Things didn't quite work out last time out when well beaten behind Sir Gerhard. I mean, what can you tell us about her?
Yeah, Statuaire, she was very good in Fairyhouse winning the Royal Bond, and that form was boosted by Mighty Potter going on to win a Grade 1 after it. The last day behind Sir Gerhard, it was just too bad to be true. She had the first time hood on that day. Whether that will be left on her, I'm not quite sure. She's the one that gets slightly worked up sometimes beforehand. Right. So, in Cheltenham, it'll be just key to keep her switched off before the race as well. I still think Willie has got a fair handle on this race, even with the loss of Aligor de Vassy. Brandy Love, back going left-handed. It'll definitely be a big advantage to her. She thrown away the race in Fairyhouse the last day with that jumping. And Dinoblue is the one I think is most likely winner of it. She was very impressive in Clonmel the last day, and I think is a mare with bags of potential.
Yes, fascinating stuff. Another horse you potentially could run on the Thursday as well, maybe in the Kinmure. Danny, I don't know if you know Mr. Fog Patches. Gather a horse you know well and is trained just up the road from you.
Yeah, Pat Fahey's horse, Mr. Fog Patches. I've ridden him plenty. I was second on him actually at Cheltenham early in December. Had a good run over there. Backed that up with a third in the Thyestes Chase, a very competitive handicap the last day. And I think, he'd have a big chance. The only thing for him is he likes a bit of decent ground. He wouldn't want it too soft, but hopefully by later in the week, the ground might have dried out a bit again if that rain arrives. I'm not sure who rides him in the race yet. There could be a possibility of having Patrick Mullins on board, which would be a big plus. I don't know if Patrick has a ride in the race yet. And as like with the conditional race, the amateur races, think you have to start with, your handful of top amateurs. They're a big advantage in those races. Were Patrick to be on him, I think that would be a serious plus for Mr. Pogpatches.
Right, that's fascinating stuff. Yeah, keep your eyes out then for that individual in the Kim Muir, of course, on the Thursday. Vincent, we'll come to you then. Anything else you like the look of? And let's have your best bet for the Thursday card.
Well, the basic thing here is that I would agree with Danny on Mr. Fogpatches. That is a big chance in the Kim Muir. The Tayestes run was very good. That was a cracking run. He had every chance up the straight. It was only after the last that he finally gave in. He's danced most dances and not won them in the last 12 months or so, and he's due a big one. And as you say, if Patrick Mullins was riding him, I'd be very keen. Another horse in the Paddy Power Plate that Danny probably knows something about is the Shunter, presuming that this is the race he goes for. He was back from 11-2 into 9-4 to win this race last year. He was also second to Protector at Aintree, fourth in the Galway Plate. He's a nice horse, that the Shunter, if he's ready and willing and ready to go here. Any news on him, Danny?
Yeah, he unseated in Leopardstown the last day, and while he won a handicap in Cheltenham last year, his jumping in Aintree and that run behind Protectorat, it just wasn't good enough when he came under real pressure. Maybe he was a handicap blot in Cheltenham last year. He got £13 for it, and even in the Galway Plate, he just made a few mistakes as well. I think off that revised mark, might just be under a little bit of pressure.
Fair enough, yeah. Another one that I do like is in the Pertemps. There's a horse that Gordon Elliott has called Dunboyne. That was a real eye catcher when never nearer fifth in one of the qualifiers at Leopardstown. And then he's since run at the Dublin Racing Festival. He was going well in a big field again when made a bad mistake at the second last. And that was the end of that performance. But I think he's one to watch out for in the Pertemps. He'd be one of my keen ones there.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Stephen, coming to you. Thursday, handicap excitement and best bet on the card.
Yeah, best bet on the card, I think, is Allaho unoriginal. The one I thought is interesting in the Pertemps is Brawson, who's about 33. He'll be a lot bigger on the exchanges. He's currently about 42 on the list, so I'm hopefully he'll get in. Not certain, maybe not. But these days it doesn't matter non-run and no bet.
Yeah.
On the cusp, yeah. He's basically got untapped potential as his stamina's drawn out. Now, he got beat last time at Musselburgh, 9-4 favourite. There was a Charles Burns plot in the race called the Big Galloper that Burns sent the men in to Musselburgh in cash, and they relieved the betting ring of about 50 grand, I'm told. And that was an absolute last-minute job that avoided the exchanges. I think he was still 9 or 10 on the exchanges, returned 15-2, something like that. Absolutely dotted up. Anyway, that's a long way of getting to Brawson, who was tapped around Musselburgh under a pretty negative ride, finished with running left in him. He's only had a few runs over this kind of trip. The Pertemps, again, you need to stay probably another half a mile further than the actual trip. They get racing a long, long way out. And Brawson has got loads more to come. Trained by a small trainer, Martin Kiddie, who trains around the corner from you in your back garden. I think he'll run really well. We always say this on Jump to It. Find a bookmaker, especially in the races like the Pertemps. 4 places is not enough. It's very unfriendly as a punter with all these huge fields. Bookmakers will be offering 6, 7, maybe even 8 places. Shop around, and I'm going to back Brawson each way at about 33-1 if he gets in the race.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Yeah, Marty Keith, he was pretty bullish on his chances at the Cheltenham Weights Day the other day. He said if he can get in, he does need 18 or so to come out with. So keep your eyes on him. I'm going for an absolute Hail Mary here. A stolen silver for the informed Sam Thomas team in the Plate. I really like that horse's claims. I think he'll run a huge race. And I'm going to keep my eyes on Danny and his mare Statuaire if he's on board, because listening to Danny's insight there, if she goes to post and she's calm, and Danny can do his job properly and keep a lid on her, then she'd definitely be carrying my money. Because that Royal Bomb form, no exaggeration, that is she's overpriced at 10-1 if she can replicate that form. And obviously, depending on how Mighty Potter gets on the Supreme, of course, I suppose earlier in the week will affect her price considerably. So lots of fascinating input there. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Stay tuned. We'll move on to Gold Cup Day. Well, it is Friday of the Cheltenham Festival. It all gets super serious here now, doesn't it? Gold Cup day, be 72,000, absolutely packed inside Prestbury Park. A lot of expectation. Hopefully, when by the time we come to the Friday, Stephen, Vincent, myself, well, we know you'll be having a good week, Danny, but we hope we've had a couple of winners, and I'm not going into Friday looking to max out the overdraft because no, this is a great day, isn't it? Lots of tradition, lots of history, lots of races to cover, including the Triumph Hurdle, which again, it seems to have this, the opening race of each day seems to be an absolute, you got the Supreme, you've got the Turners, and then you've got this Triumph Hurdle, a wonderful contest. Vauban, Pied Piper, Ciel De Neige, the big three, if you like, all trained in Ireland, Vauban and Pied Piper. Vauban has been, of course, a subject of a lot of support in recent times. There wasn't much between Vauban and Pied Piper when they met on their penultimate start. Ciel De Neige, of course, is the horse who set the standard for most of the season, and he was behind Vauban last time out. And then you're into the English contingent, if you like. Porticello, of course, who hacked up at Haydock last time out. Knight Salute, who won the Adonis, and then a few others. Danny, fascinating race this. Tactics are going to play a part. It sounds like Gordon Elliott, with the same ownership, is going to let both Pied Piper and Ciel De Neige have a crack at Vauban. What we saw of Vauban last time out seems to be a horse, a real turn of foot, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, definitely. And, as you say, Vauban and Pied Piper, their form is quite closely matched on that Punchestown maiden hurdle. And both of them went on to frank it since. Vauban winning the Grade 1 at the Dublin Festival, and Pied Piper winning very impressively in Cheltenham. Ciel De Neige wasn't disgraced that day in Leopardstown behind Vauban, but the one I like in the race at a slightly bigger price is the horse that was third in Leopardstown. I rode him that day, Ile Tom, for Willie Mullins. First run over hurdles, jumped a little bit green and slow early on in the race, learned a lot as the race went on, and was only 5 lengths behind Vauban, having its first start over hurdles. I thought that was quite impressive, and with the potential to improve, I think he could be one that could cause an upset here.
Yeah, but he's 14-1 still, a fairly big price. I saw Vincent nodding in agreement there. I mean, do you see this as a 3-horse race? I mean, to begin with, out of the big three in inverted commas, I mean, which one would you be siding with? And then if you're not convinced by their claims overall, are you looking at a double-figure priced horse to get in the mix here?
I think to take into account here is the Triumph. These horses, they've all been running over 2 miles, standard stuff. And it's always the case every year. They're 3-year-olds up to Christmas, they're 4-year-olds after Christmas coming through, and they all run over 2 miles. This race is 2 miles, 179 yards with a stiff uphill finish. It takes a certain type of horse to win a Triumph. I've had a look at some of the winners of the race previously. You look at horses like Comanche Court, went on to win an Irish Grand National. Tiger Roll won this, went on to win 2 Grand Nationals in Aintree. You have Burning Victory, second in a Cesarewitch last year. You have Celestial Halo won a long distance hurdle by 17 lengths. You have Farcla most recently ran second to Run Wild Fred in the Troy Town. Like, you need a stayer.
Stamina.
That's what they ultimately turned out to be, the stayers. So you need something with stamina. And of the big three, the one who screams stamina at me is Ciel De Neige. I'll be surprised if Ciel De Neige, if this race is a true run race up the hill, everything else, I'd like to be on Ciel De Neige against Vauban. I'm sure Vauban has far more talent and is a much better horse, but it's all speed. I don't think this will suit Vauban particularly, because I think it'll turn into a slog by the end of it. And for me, Ciel De Neige is the one. Pied Piper, according to the Elliott team, they thought they only had one contender for the Triumph going back 2 months ago, which was Ciel De Neige, and then all of a sudden Pied Piper came out of the woodwork. The same could happen with the horse that Danny was on about that ran behind these at Christmas or at the Dublin Racing Festival. Again, it's like the Supreme. You're dealing with horses here that they're very unexposed. They could be improving at a rapid rate, and we just don't know. They're only 4-year-olds, so something could easily pop out of the woodwork here, something we're not expecting, and it could well be the horse that Danny mentioned. But it could, for me, of the big three, if they all run the races, I'd be happy to side with Ciel De Neige, because I think he'll definitely stay the trip.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, Stephen, we've got very different types of horses here, haven't we? Obviously, Pied Piper and Vauban being ex-flat horses, clearly not devoid of toe.
Yeah.
You've got Ciel De Neige, looks the proper grinder in here. I suppose the ground, in some respects, 2 miles, 1 furlong on the new course. The ground became very testing, I suppose you'd argue that would swing it more to the stamina type. So you in the Ciel De Neige camp then?
Yeah, I'm quite surprised at the market here. It often happens that when a horse gets beaten, it gets immediately dismissed as though he'll never beat the horse that beats it a length and a half ever again. And one of them's now 7-4, and the other one's 7-1. And I thought Phil Dore set too slow a tempo and got done for pace. This is the classic glider against the grinder, isn't it? Phil Dore is the grinder, the galloper, the finder for pressure, whereas Vauban has got speed and looks all class. I mean, Vauban was sent off 9-4 on for his hurdling debut in a 20-runner race and bumped into Pied Piper. It's quite amazing the confidence behind it. The Bush Telegraph has obviously
made a mess of the last flight as well, didn't he?
Yeah, very costly. But very impressive the other day, Vauban. But it was speed rather than stamina, and the extra furlong will definitely suit. I think you could make a really good case for betting Phil Dore each way. The one thing to say here is I will be amazed if any of the English horses trouble them. I know you're about to tip up Dr. Parnassus, who's been winning 3-runner races round the flaps, round the gaffs, Taunton. I'd be amazed if he was good enough. This is another classic race where the Irish horses are miles clear of the English. I mean, I'm so old, Ed, that I can remember horses like Countrywide Flame Ring winning at 33-1. This used to be another bookmaker's benefit, a low-grade juvenile hurdle where anything could win, and they're all in a heap. They're all rated about 80 on the flat, and anything happened, and it was a cavalry charge. But now, this is now a high-quality race with a select few very expensive horses running against each other. And I think Ireland will finish first, second, and third. I think Phil Dore, each way, 7-1. I can think of a lot worse bets than that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people could see him in the mix. Yeah, Dr. Parnassus was the one I mean, in fairness to stamina, he won over 2-3 last time out. If anyone saw, I know that the form of it's pants relative to what the others have achieved. But if you want to see a horse take off at the back of the last, the way he did, I mean, he won head in chest 15 lengths there. I think he's entitled to take his chance in. I thought Harry Skelton was spot on. He said, we won't find out how good he is if we leave him in his stable. So he's a horse proven stamina. Cutting the ground won't be a problem. I think he'd go well. Danny, just to come back to you on the Triumph, pin you to spot here. I have a feeling what you might say, but if I gave you the chance to ride any of the big three in the Triumph hurdle, who would you pick?
I'd pick Vauban.
Based on the run last time out, or just his overall profile?
His overall profile. The only negative is it looked like he was hanging a good bit in Leopardstown the last day with Paul, but in fairness to the horse, once he came off the bridle, he ran straight to the line, down the back straight, and that he looked like he was hanging that little bit. Yeah. So the fact that he didn't drift late on was a positive with that, but I still think he's got the biggest engine in the race. Now, who knows how much more Piper had up his sleeve in Cheltenham, and possibly if it gets into a real slog, Vincent's angle on the race with Phil Dore could be one to come true. I don't think he has the class to do it, and I think there's enough, top class riders riding the fancied ones here that they're not going to get lock horns too early, and it will go to possibly Vauban or Piper. But I think the Il est temps for Willie is definitely not out of it. He'll jump away a lot sharper through the early part of the race, and there's a good chance he could get into the mix late on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Some unknown quantities in there, as you would expect. I think ground, as always, will probably have a huge bearing on how this race pans out. We'll move on to the grade one Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle. Next race on your cards. Manila Crooner, 4-1 market leader, along with Hillcrest, who's vying for favouritism from the Henry Daly team. Ginso, 5-1. Journey with Me, 13-2. Manila Kakuna. Watch your Manillas here. It's very much a case of that at 7-1. Stephen, you can lead us off on this one. This is a race where, again, similar to the Ballymore, we don't really know who exactly is turning up. But on the assumption most of these do, I mean, which kind of way would you be going?
Yeah, this looks at least 5-1 the field. When Manila Kakuna won the other day, without flattering Danny, he gave it a brilliant ride. He got a breather in, having got a clear lead, got a breather in coming to 2 out, and then went again. I didn't think Hollow Games was seen to best effect again. I haven't thought that the last twice. He's been patiently ridden and finished with running left. That being said, he did hang for pressure as well. So whether he's straightforward, I'm not sure. But I do think Hollow Games, around about 8 or 10-1, with the increased emphasis on stamina that this race is going to provide, He could again be the each-way value, providing he goes for this race. Of course, this is another race that Ireland are definitely going to dominate.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I thought no one else would be mentioning Hollow Games. Yeah, I thought he looks a beautifully slow old individual. Would be perfect for this, for want of a better phrase. He's a 4-miler, shall we say, and he'll gallop all the way to the line. It's often this race can, Vincent, turn into a battle of wills and a war of attrition, more than necessarily who's the class act. It doesn't always work out that way. But I mean, how do you sum this up? The Irish have a really strong hand in here. We have Hillcrest representing Henry Daly, who Henry Daly was asked at Cheltenham a couple of days ago, still hasn't committed to this contest, may wait to go to Aintree. If you take him out of it, it's a bit of a who's who of the Irish staying novice hurdle scene.
It is, yeah. And for me, I think Gordon Elliott has a strong hand in this division. Ginto and Hollow Games, they're two very decent horses, both with similar ownership or same ownership, that Bective Stud owns both of them. Ginto looks the best of them. It's which race does he go for? Does he go for the Ballymore? Does he go here? And everything that Gordon Elliott has been saying for months is that you would imagine it goes here. The longer trip is what the horse wants. All he does is stay, dour stayer. He called him a big bull at one stage. He was bought for 470,000 after winning a point-to-point. So it's big money stuff. A lot riding on him from the fact that I think Gordon Elliott owned him beforehand as well. So sold it to the Bective Stud people for big money. You'd like to think that he'd return it with a win at Cheltenham. He'll pick the right race. It looks like this should be the right race in my book. If he runs here, you presume Hollow Games doesn't. So it depends on which one goes where. Yeah. And I think this race really suits Ginto if he turns up.
Yeah, owner-trainer politics. Never heard of that one before. Danny, we'll come to you on this. Obviously, you could, in theory, be in this race, hopefully riding Manella Kakuna. If you are on board that individual in this, will you do anything different, extended up to 3 miles on the new course, compared to what you did last time out over a shorter trip? Or are you going to keep all secrets close to your chest, shall we say?
Who knows? Myself and Willie had a chat before the race in Leopardstown, and I went down to the start with 3, possibly 4 different plans in my head. Just got to look what people were doing down there, and went with plan A. It seemed to work out. I think the Albert Bartlett has run 3 miles on the new course. Generally, the winners come from handy in the race, and you wouldn't like to be too far away. Although, over 3 miles, Manella Kakuna might just need to drop in for a little bit of cover, going that extra few furlongs. He went a good gallop in Leopardstown, but once I steadied the race up, leaving the back, he wasn't short of a turn of foot to get going late on. So were they, to get galloping very early and race down the hill, you just want to be taking your time a little bit. He's not lacking that bit of class. There's a horse here of Willie's also that I think has a big chance at slightly bigger price. He hasn't been seen since Christmas. Is Hensey, won in Limerick over Christmas. He, to me, looks like a real stayer. I'm not 100% sure does he go for this race, but I think he'd fit in to the type of horse you need for it. It was only 2 miles he won over in Limerick at Christmas. Heavy ground. I think he jumped the second last in front, possibly got headed and got back up, showed that little bit of class to get back up and win again, stepping up to 3 miles here in a race that can throw up a big outsider. I think it's plenty of value in Hensey.
Interesting one, yeah. Looks an out-and-out mudlark, a real unknown quantity there, Hensey, for the Willie Mullins team, I think it's fair to say. But all in all, a little bit of a head-scratcher in this assignment. We still don't really know who's going to be turning up. It does look one of the most wide-open races at this stage in regards to the Grade 1s at the Cheltenham Festival. Right, we'll move on to the big one. The Cheltenham Gold Cup on Friday afternoon. Now, we'll mix things up a bit here. I'm not going to go through the protagonists. We're going to come straight to King George winning jockey Danny Mullins, of course, who was on board Tornado Flyer for that hazy day at the Sunbury venue over the Christmas period. I mean, you must have enjoyed that, Danny. And one thing that really kind of jumped off the page to my mind there was how well he stayed, given that was soft ground and the horse was going up in trip pretty much to around that distance for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. You know, most of his racing had been done at 2.5 miles. He had one run over 3 miles where he just didn't perform in Leopardstown that day. But what I liked about him was the middle part of the race, how he travelled and jumped so well. You know, he'd run solid race last year, went third to Allaho in the Ryanair, but he was just always on his head and chasing the race to try and keep up and hoping you were going to get a good jump to keep you in the race. Where in Kempton at 3 miles, he just seemed to do it so much more at his ease. And as you say, Kempton this year was a lot softer than it usually would have been, given they got a lot of rain on Christmas Day. The fact that even when he jumped the last, he picked up and raced away again. He hit the line very strong. It'd have to give you great confidence that he can see out the extra 2.5 furlongs in a Gold Cup. But nobody's truly going to know that until you get there. It's unknown territory. I'd have every confidence in the horse seeing it out. I think it'll be run at a true tempo again. It's a very competitive race, but I'd give Tornado probably the same chance as going into the King George. I think he's a lively each-way contender, but the race might need to be run to suit, and from looking at the opposition, I think there's a good chance it will be run strongly again.
Well, it's fascinating stuff, Stephen, if I bring you in here. I mean, there's two schools of thought. Number one is you have a King George winner at 14-1, which if you go back through the record books, King George winners that season are pretty much habitually started about 5-1 or shorter. So in some ways, he could be massively overpriced given that, what he's done. The other school of thought is Flanders Oboe's fluffed his line since, Frodon's fluffed his line since the race, in inverted commas, fell apart a little bit. I mean, which side of the fence are you sitting on?
Very much the latter. It was an appalling King George. The forms worked out diabolically, and Danny was in the right place at the right time from well off a very strong pace. The horse I think the horse will stay fine, but I just don't think he's good enough. I think he probably is about 25-1 chance, something like that. Things happen in the Gold Cup. I don't think this is a very competitive Gold Cup. I mean, it's very unoriginal, but I think A Plus Tard is a rock-solid favourite, and I think the best form is the form with Galvin, and they are the front two, and they're well clear of the rest. I mean, you scroll down them, the horse of Dan Skelton's Protectorat, I don't think he's good enough. I don't think he'll get up the hill in a soft ground Gold Cup that's truly run. Conflated, got a very good ride winning the other day. He's unexposed, but the ground will be different. This trip will test him. I don't think he'll stay. Album Photos reportedly not working well. He's old enough to smoke. Minella Indo doesn't jump fluently enough. Had a very hard race the other day. I honestly don't think there's that many runners. I think A Plus Tard, if you can get 3-1 or bigger, is an extremely fair price. He's still improving. He's run 2 blinders this season at a time when the yard was out of form. He's got a good record at Cheltenham. He ran an absolute screamer last year. He's going forwards. And I think Galvin, who got the absolute run of the race when beating A Plus Tard. A Plus Tard did too much too soon when Galvin beat him. But Galvin is a thorough stayer with a brilliant Cheltenham record, stays 4 miles. This should be a true run race. I was going to ask Danny, actually, saying it should be a true run race. Where's the pace going to come from in the Gold Cup? Because there's no obvious front runners. They've all been scratched, haven't they? Native River, Frodon, all the horses who look like they might lead are not in the race. So there's probably a vacancy for something making the run. It's not a bad race to make the running in. Native River, Denman, you know, it's not impossible to make all. And there's probably a cheap lead going, I would have thought.
I'd imagine Royal Pagaya is probably the leader. Conflated, they're saying they'll go Ryanair with him. Minella Indo won't be far away. I imagine they won't want to press too hard with him. But I'd imagine Royal Pagaya will go a good gallop along in front.
Yeah, I mean, there's horses I can't have on my mind. And Royal Pagaya is no way in the world that can win a Gold Cup. I wouldn't. Chantry House is an absolute million. There's horses are very, very hard to fancy at all. I'm not sure it's a sort of 3-1, 7-2 the field race. Personally, I think the front two are well clear.
Well, for my sake anyway, I hope my 8-1 fancy protector runs a lot better than Stephen's pronunciation of A Plus Tard. Vincent, we'll come to you. Is this a 2-horse race? I mean, are we being disrespectful here to the reigning Gold Cup champion Manella Indo, who, to his credit, with Puppy Power on board last time out, showed a lot more of his old spark?
Yeah, and you've also got a dual Gold Cup winner in here in Album Photo as well, but obviously he was well held by them last season. According to Willie Mullins earlier this season, he was saying that the horse had never been fully right last season, and it was probably a very good run to finish third in the Gold Cup last year to the two Bromhead horses. And all things seem to be going great up to last week when Willie had a press morning and he just said he wasn't happy with Album Photo the way he'd been working over the previous week or two. That he was an each way player here, but you have to take that as what it is and just say hold off on that for now. And I come back to the same horse all the time as Galvin. I can't see how he's not involved. He's okay. He's probably about a 4-1 chance to win the race. Each way, how is he out of the first three? When you take, there are so many negatives about so many other runners in it. There are plenty of them in it that just don't look good enough. There's quite a few in it that are doubtful stayers. You have others that you question the form they're in, such as Album Photo. Manella Indo, last year's winner, has been very poor all season. You can disregard one poor run from a horse, but when you've had 2 or 3 bad runs in a row, there has to be something wrong. He's not the horse we saw last year. Was
it a bad run last time out though?
I think it is. I think it is. In fairness, yeah, I think it is. I think he's a Gold Cup winner here. Like he should be winning those sort of races, and he's not. That's what I think. I think he's a horse that, for me, he's not quite what he was this time last year. Nowhere near it, possibly. And then there has been a shadow over the stable. Okay, we'd like to think they're coming right now, and they probably are. But even at that, A Plus Tard looks the more likely one of the two from the Bromhead yard, and Galvin has already beaten that. Maybe it was an enterprising ride to beat A Plus Tard, but you give them another two furlongs up a hill. There's no question which horse wins if you take the two same horses from the Leopardstown race. That if they're in the same form as they were there, I'd be confident that Galvin will win over an extra 2 furlongs. He's already, as we said, he won the National Hunt Chase over almost 4 miles here 12 months ago. Gordon Elliott will have him primed for this. He won't be far away. Each way at 4-1, he's definitely a bet.
Would soft ground be a worry?
Yes, it would, yeah. But having said that, we're talking about it earlier on in the show about the fact the ground is currently, they're talking about it being good to soft at the moment. They're looking to try and keep it that way for the opening day of the festival. We're now seeing rain for the weekend before it, which will certainly probably make it soft to start with. But if we get dry during the week, it dries really quick in Cheltenham. You could end up that they might even be talking about watering by the time we come along to a Gold Cup.
Yeah, the taps on. Yeah, absolutely. We've heard that many a time, haven't we? Danny, if we come back to you regarding the protagonists here, I mean, you've got very different types of horses, haven't you? You've got A Plus Tard, as we saw at Haydock earlier in the season. I mean, jumps and he travels, and he's clearly got that 2.5 mile speed. You've got Galvin, who of course is 1 over shorter, but confirmed stamina over 3.6 at the festival. Manella Indo very much more, you'd say, in that bracket, a resolute stayer. Of those towards the top, if I could get your tornado flyer goggles off for one moment and kind of give you the open option of riding any of those towards the top of the market, who would you like to ride? Who do you think's got the most convincing claims?
I think Manella Indo. His form in the spring is fantastic. He never really performs during the year, and that run the last day in Leopardstown, I think that was a solid run. He's coming back to himself, conflated. He was the outsider of the field, but if you look at Manella Indo's record at the Cheltenham Festival, it's fantastic, and he's probably always gone in there under the radar. Even as a novice hurdler, was he 50-1? There, his form before the Novice Chase was okay. I suppose it wasn't desperate; it was only okay. And last year, he wasn't really setting the place on fire before the Gold Cup. And again, he came back to it on the day. I think he won it last year. Rachel Blackmore was kicking herself more so for the fact that she just picked the wrong horse. I don't think she done anything wrong on A Plus Tard, and I can't see a reason why A Plus Tard is going to reverse the form. I think Manella Indo has better, stronger line of form than Galvin, and you're getting down through some of the rest of them. Album Photo wasn't too far behind him last year, but he's a year older. Reports, Willie is not happy with him. It's a negative as well. I think Menelindo is the one they all have to beat.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you should say that, mentioning Rachel Blackmore. I mean, we'll presume she will be on the Plutard, and sounds like Robbie Power could be coming in for the ride on this one. So a very split opinion on here. So just to confirm, as it is the biggest race pretty much of the week, we'll come to you first then, Vincent. Your Team Galvin.
I'm Team Galvin, yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Stephen?
A+ Tard for me.
You're getting there. I'm giving you a chance. You got the Plutard. Right, brilliant. Okay, and Danny, Tornado Flyer for you, obviously.
I'll go with Tornado Flyer. I think Menelindo is the most likely one I have to beat.
Up the Flyer, and I'm gonna as I say, you could save this and play it back when your Protectorate sneaks home by a neck. No, in all seriousness, I think 8-1 now is probably a rubbish price, but he's the bit of form in here which doesn't really time with anything else. He's totally fresh. He's unexposed. I mean, he was last seen winning a Grade 2 by 28 lengths. Okay, the form might not be anything, but he's an unknown quantity. And in a race where they've all been kind of beating each other a little bit this season, I do like the unexposed angle of that 7-year-old. Danny, on the rest of Gold Cup Day, is there anything else here you should be alerting us to? You think you'll probably be on board?
On Gold Cup Day, not the one that I'll be on board, but again, I know we've mentioned him already. Stateman, he's in the Martin Pipe. Keep an eye to where he goes. If he goes to Coral Cup, it's obviously earlier in the week, but Willie's record in the Martin Pipe is fantastic. I think he could be a very good bet in that, and also in the Fox Hunters. I think Billaway has a great chance of getting his head in front this year. He's gone close before now.
Yeah, interesting stuff. It's funny you should mention that State Man. Obviously, Langadan last year bumped into a horse called Galloping the Champ, who was 9 stone well in. I suppose Team Skelton, they'll be tearing their hair out if State Man turns up and does a similar thing to him this time round. Vincent, yourself, anything jumping off the page?
Yeah, like a couple of horses in the counties. A horse called Top Bandit, Gordon Elliott horse. He took 5 goes to win a bumper, but he's been a revelation over hurdles. He's won his last 3. Including at Cheltenham in October. I think he'll take a bit of beating. He's only £4 higher his UK rating to his Irish one, so he's pretty much on parity compared to some of the Irish horses. And then there's another one. Again, it's a Gordon Elliott horse, and it's a horse called the Goffer. I presume it's meant to be the Gopher, but it's Goffer. Anyway, it won a Grade 3 in Thurles the last day. There's a horse that Danny had called the Little Yank of John Ryan's, finished down the field in that, and is another entry. I wouldn't think that's a contender here. But what's interesting about this horse, the Goffer, he looks to be very well handicapped here off 140, in my opinion. You've got, first of all, he comes out and he beats a horse called Highland Charge, 8 lengths to win a maiden hurdle in Navan over 2.5 off level weights. That same horse, Highland Charge, in Noel Meads, comes out then, runs against Sir Gerhard in Leopardstown, gets beaten the exact same distance, 8 lengths by Sir Gerhard. Then you have Highland Charge goes then, wins a maiden the last day. It beat Micromanage. And made a mistake at the last and still beat Micromanage. Micromanage's of Willie's is rated 134. I've no doubt that the Goffer is better than a 140. I'd be very keen on that. The last day when it won in Thurles, it beat a horse of Willie's called Berkshire Royal, which had been off the track for quite a bit, but that was bought out of Andrew Balding's for a lot of money. They paid 130 grand for it. It hadn't run since last May. Maybe Danny would know a bit about that, just to give another line of form for that horse, the Goffer.
Yeah, Berkshire Royal was a decent horse. I actually won him during the summer, but he ran first time over hurdles in the Supreme 2 years ago. He's had a lot of problems since then, but he's a horse with a big engine, and it'd definitely be a nice form boost for the Goffer.
Yeah, the Goffer around. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, one of my final thing is just as the bet of the day for the final day of it.
Yeah, go on.
I think there's a real angle here into Gordon Elliott. Certainly, we've talked about on previous shows about the fact that Willie Mullins is a short price to be leading trainer, and he probably will be. But Gordon Elliott is the only alternative to him in that leading trainer title. And if Gordon Elliott is within 2 or 3 of Willie Mullins going into the Friday, I think you can back him. I think he could win any amount of races. He could have 5 or 6 winners if things fell his way. He's got Fildor and Pied Piper in the Triumph. He's got Ginto Hollow Games in the Albert Bartlett. He's got Galvin, which we talked about as a contender in the Gold Cup. He's got Top Bandit in the County Hurdle. He's got this horse, the Goffer, in the Martin Pipe. You could definitely do some sort of multiple around some of them on the final day.
A very strong hand for Gordon Elliott, it would appear, on the final day. Stephen, come to you. What's your best bet on the Friday? And is there a handicap lurker that Jump To It viewers should be alerted to?
Well, I think A+ Tard at 3-1 or bigger is a very fair price. That's my best bet. On the whole 4 days, I like Air having 19 or more winners, 10-11. I think that's absolute nap. That'll be maximum stakes for me. The handicap lurker, well, unfortunately, the market has rather spotted him. You mentioned him just now, Langer Dan. He's had 3 career runs at Cheltenham. He finished 2nd in the Triumph Hurdle. He finished 6th in the Boodles. He should have won that day. Harry Skelton got murdered up the inside and stopped when he was closing. And then last year, he bumped into Galloping des Champs. The whole stable was on. He came from virtually last to first on the bridle and bumped into a graded horse, unfortunately, which is often the way. He's been laid out for this race. He's had 1 run since. Everything went to plan at Taunton the other day. Finished last 6-1 out to 12-1. Let's just say never reached a challenging position that day. Remarkably, he's been dropped £3 for that sighter. He's extremely well handicapped. The only problem is now, and often is the case at Cheltenham, is the price has gone, Eddie. I think he's around 6 or 7-1, but he is bound to run well. He's been laid out for the race for the last year. He's very well treated. Everything's in his favour. If it's good to soft ground, that'll be perfect. He wouldn't probably want it too deep. He's a smooth traveller, so he should go really well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great stuff. I mean, I'm going to throw in another one from the... so I've got my hashtag Dan Skelton t-shirt on for this show. But yeah, I do think West Cork in the County Hurdle was another one who's been laid out for this course. Won the Greatwood. The form of the Greatwood is working out unbelievably, isn't it? If you start going through the horses in behind, I think about half a dozen of them who've been beaten in that sense have all come out and won, including horse of Tom Lacey's Glory and Fortune, of course, scooped a huge pod at Newbury not long ago, and he was wow down the field. Had an overreach and was lame in Ascot, but has been kept fresh for this. And of course, the Yard have won this 3 times in the last 6 years, so they know how to get the job done. Right, before we go then, gents, Danny, will come to you. I mean, what are you doing? You like Nicky Henderson horse? Are you bubble wrapping yourself for the next 10 days, or you back to it up early and on the road for a whole host of rides, shall we say?
Yeah, up early on the road. I've 4 rides tomorrow, 4 rides Sunday. Hopefully knock in a few more winners before we get there.
What do you do? Do you arrive at the Cheltenham Festival without being invading your privacy? I mean, do you get there? Have you got a tradition? Do you arrive on the Sunday or the Monday night, late doors, Tuesday morning? Is there any kind of Willie Mullins routine which you're kind of accustomed to now, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I suppose the routine would be ride in either Naas or Limerick as a double meeting in Ireland on the Sunday. Sunday night we'd fly over, be there to sit on Tuesday's runners on Monday morning, get them a little leg stretch around the race course in the infield, and then chill out Monday evening and get ready for action. Absolutely.
Vincent, will you be going for a little stretch on the Monday? I mean, you're watching from home, I gather, this time around. You won't actually be at Prestbury Park, but is it a case of some more anti-post bets, or you wait till the time now?
I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait and see what runs. There's so much still up in the air around a lot of the races that we've discussed here. And one of the things I normally do when I've been to Cheltenham, I'd say about 18 of the last 20 years I've been over for it. Didn't go, obviously, with COVID, and it turns out I'm not going this year either. We've a lot of other things on with the website. But the basic thing for me would be that when I'm at home, I'd normally try and get up to the local pub to watch some of the races, to be a good crew up there for it. But this year there'll be no one in it. I'll be the only one sitting there. There's one of the local guys in the pub is getting married later in the year, so he's having a stag party in Malaga for Cheltenham Race Week. There's 23 or 25 of the local guys are all going. If you've got any female relatives in Malaga, I'd reckon you should lock them up or move them somewhere that week. So it'll be all quiet for me. I'll be sitting in the pub on my own, drinking pints of Guinness, watching the Gold Cup, I'd imagine.
Oh, sounds absolutely divine. Stephen, yourself, are you just going to keep lumping on the more than 19 Ireland winners at the festival? Is that your ploy for the next week?
That's the starting point. I haven't really backed much else. making books on all the races, trying to do the form, get up really early. 5 a.m. starts. No drinking during Cheltenham weekend. I know you're a strict teetotaler yourself, but I'll be cutting right down on. So sell your Laithwaite shares at the start of the week. I'll be cutting right down for 4 days. But no, it's a brilliant. There's lots of betting opportunities, and as a punter, a lot of the time you're pulling your hair out trying to get on, doing what you want to do. There's no value. The prices are gone. But at Cheltenham, the bookmakers do come out to play, and there's an awful lot of value for looking around. They're very competitive on prices about the front ones, and you've definitely got a chance, even in this day and age, over the 4 days.
Absolutely. I think that brings it to close beautifully, doesn't it? Some really exciting stuff to look forward to. And my thanks, of course, to Vincent, to you, Stephen, and a special thanks to you, Danny, for taking the time out to listen to us rattle on for well over 2 hours. No, many thanks. Really is appreciated for your insights. And I hope you at home have made a note of all those great insights with Danny there. Lots of different angles and lots of horses, stuff behind the scenes, which, of course, we don't always get to see. And yeah, thanks for you for watching at home. Don't forget to keep checking out irishracing.com for all the latest news, views and features and all things Cheltenham Festival related, and bettingexpert.com too to check out all Stephen's selections. Many thanks once again to the panel. Thank you at home for watching. We'll see you again soon.